Chapter 960. Hearing this, the corner of her mouth twitched, that is pure admiration. When a man looks at a woman, it is not pure admiration, it is all-colored admiration. Duan Yi had an "I knew it" expression. He did not believe Feng Jiu's words at all. Feng Jiu could not be bothered to say more to him. She looked towards the he couple and said, "How about this? I will go to your residence tomorrow morning to take a look. The situation will depend on the illness." Originally, she planned to wait for Ning Lang's answer tomorrow. Regardless of whether he agreed or not, she was going to take him away. However, meeting this person who was seeking medical treatment, just like what Madam he said, all parents in the world have the heart. Seeing their own son suffering, the pain of being unable to save him at any time, was even more unacceptable than taking their own lives. Although she was a cold-hearted person, she was also a sentimental person. She protected the people she valued and did not wish for the people she cherished to be hurt. Towards those who wanted to kill her and take her life, she could also be cold and merciless. But towards this kind of selfless and unconditional relationship between parents and children, she could not ignore it. It was one thing if she did not meet it, but now that she met it and they came begging, she would help if she could. Anyway, this kind of thing to her was just a matter of using her hands, but to others, it was a chance to live. Hearing this, the he couple was extremely emotional and hurriedly thanked. "Thank you, Ghost Doctor, thank you, Ghost Doctor. We will immediately go back and tell this news to our son. Tomorrow we will definitely bring Ghost Doctor to our house." Both of them were extremely emotional. After thanking her profusely, they went back home, intending to tell this news to their son. The others watched the two of them leave. Someone opened his mouth and said, "Ghost Doctor, we..." Before he could finish, he was interrupted. "Everyone, please go back. No matter if it is medicine or elixirs, I have not refined them recently and have nothing to sell to you. Furthermore, my elixirs and medicines will only be auctioned and will not be sold privately." Feng Jiu stood up, patted her robes and said to the city lord and his wife, "It is already late, I will go back and rest first." As she said that, she cupped her hands and bowed, then turned around and left. Duan Yi also stood up when he saw this. He walked to Ning Lang's side and put his hand on his shoulder. "Little fatty, let's go. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's have a good chat tonight." As he spoke, he directly pulled her away without caring about the consequences. Seeing this, the city lord and his wife exchanged a glance. Then, the city lord said to the others, "Everyone, I, Ning, will return the 100,000 gold coins my son received from all of you." He truly lacked consideration and was too disrespectful. "I, Ning, apologize to all of you again. I hope that everyone will forgive my son and not bicker with him. City Lord Ning's words are too serious. There is no need to return the 100,000 gold coins. Tonight, I can see the Ghost Doctor. Even if I can't get the medicine, this money is still worth it." As one of them spoke, he stood up and cupped his hands in greeting. He smiled and said, "I'll take my leave first. I'll visit again another day." "That's right, there's no need to return this 100,000 gold. It's not a lot of money, so let's leave it at that. We'll take our leave as well." The others also stood up and said with a smile. Chapter 961. As a result, everyone took their leave one after another. The city lord personally sent them out, and only after the guests had all left did he return inside and say to his wife, "I never thought that Lang would do such a thing after recognizing the Ghost Doctor's identity. Say, do you think this matter will really be let go? Lang should not have known the Ghost Doctor at first. I think the Ghost Doctor should be young Master Duan's friend. That's why they came here together." As the city lord's wife said that, she thought for a moment and said, "Let them settle this matter themselves. We cannot interfere too much in their matters." And, that's true. The city lord nodded and returned to the courtyard with his wife without saying anything else. On the other side, Duanyi hugged Ning Lang and asked, "Little fatty, you really cheated those people of 100,000 gold each? Also, how did you recognize Fengjiu as the ghost doctor? You didn't even tell me that you recognized him. You're not a good friend." Ning Lang scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "You also know that I like money. Once there's an opportunity to earn money, I won't let it go. So." He looked at the tightly shut door and asked hesitantly, "Do you think it's better if I go in and apologize?" "Apologize? Haha." Duanyi laughed softly and patted him on the shoulder. "You. Selling Fengjiu isn't something that can be settled with just an apology. Hurry up and go back to sleep. Isn't he still waiting for your answer? Think about it and tell him. I think it will be more useful than your apology." Hearing this, Ning Lang frowned and nodded, "I understand. I will go back and think about it." As he said that, he wanted to turn around and leave. However, he still walked to the tightly shut door. "Fengjiu, I'm sorry. I went overboard tonight. I'm sorry. You must forgive me." As he said that, he did not hear any movement inside. Thus, he turned around and left. He returned to his courtyard and thought about whether he should go to the Hell Mountain range. Initially, he had only promised to give the answer the next day to stall for time. He had wanted to keep the other party around so that he could earn some money. However, he had never expected things to turn out like this. He really shouldn't have done that. At that time, he had only thought of getting someone to send out those posts for 100,000 gold coins. He hadn't thought of the final outcome. Duanyi watched Ning Lang leave with his head lowered. After a long while, he knocked on Fengjiu's door and shouted, "Fengjiu, you still haven't told me how you became the ghost doctor." However, there was still no sound from inside. Seeing this, he pushed the door but found that it was locked. He had no choice but to give up. "I'm going to the He family tomorrow. Don't disturb me. Go back and rest." Fengjiu's voice came from inside. He still did not open the door. "When you go to the He family tomorrow, remember to call me along. I'll go take a look too," he instructed before turning around and returning to his room. That night, for some people, they would not be able to sleep. However, for Fengjiu and Duanyi, once they rested, they fell into a deep sleep under the influence of alcohol. The next morning, the warm sunlight shone on the ground. The gentle light shone through the leaves and cast a shadow on the ground. A cool breeze blew, and the leaves swayed from the branches and fell to the ground in the courtyard. Chapter 962. At the same time, the He family head who had arrived early did not dare disturb him. He could only wait outside for him to wake up. After another hour, Fengjiu finally woke up. He remembered that he had to go to the He family to treat the He family's young master, so he got up to wash up. Not long after, he went out of the courtyard and called for Duanyi to bring some breakfast over. He ate while waiting for Duanyi. After another hour, the two of them finished eating and went to the front yard. They saw the He family head quickly greet them. "Ghost doctor. Sorry, I woke up late," she said apologetically. No, I came early," the He family head quickly said. Looking at the red-clothed youth in front of him, he respectfully said, "Ghost doctor, the carriage is ready. Ghost doctor and Duke Duan, please get on the carriage." Fengjiu nodded and walked out with him. The two of them got on a luxurious carriage. The He family head personally rode in front to lead the way. Some people who didn't know saw this scene and were surprised. They secretly asked around. About an hour later, they arrived at the He manor. Madam He had already brought people to wait outside. When she saw them arrive, she quickly went to greet them. After bowing, she invited them in. "Ghost doctor, this is my Hong's courtyard. Because his legs are inconvenient and he can't get out of bed, he couldn't come out to greet you. I hope the ghost doctor won't take offense." The He family head said. I won't. Fengjiu shook his head and walked in. Once inside, the smell of medicine entered her nose. The entire air was filled with an aura of death. She didn't need to look to know that this person was sick to the point of death. Open the windows and doors for ventilation. She indicated. Hearing this, Madam He quickly had people open the windows and doors. She walked with Fengjiu to the side of the bed. Hong, this is the ghost doctor young Master Feng. Quickly greet young Master Feng. Greetings to young Master Feng. I can't get out of bed to greet you. I hope young Master Feng won't take offense. Fengjiu's gaze fell on the man lying on the bed. The man was around 25 years old. His face was thin and pale. When he spoke, his voice was weak. In contrast to his pale face, his lips were red like fire. Seeing this, she nodded her head. Let me see your legs. Hearing this, the He family head walked forward and lifted the blanket on his son. The person under the blanket was only wearing a pair of short underwear. His 2 legs were shockingly swollen, and his skin was dark with a tinge of red. Seeing this, Fengjiu frowned slightly. She took a step forward and reached out to feel the temperature of his legs. Sure enough, it was as hot as fire. She frowned and looked at his legs. After a moment of thought, she said, lift up his shirt. Okay. The He family head hurriedly responded. He lifted his son's shirt and looked at Fengjiu. He didn't dare disturb him. Even though he was anxious, he could only watch silently. Fengjiu glanced at his abdomen and pressed down again. When she saw the man's pained expression, she withdrew her hand and said, the fire poison is already attacking upwards. At this time, the fire poison in his internal organs has already spread. If he is not treated within 3 days, he will undoubtedly die. Madam He heard this and her legs went soft as she cried and begged, I beg the ghost doctor to save my son. I beg the ghost doctor, I only have this one son. Chapter 963. Hearing this, family head He's heart was filled with joy as he hurriedly replied, good. What medicine does the ghost doctor need? I'll immediately send someone to bring it over. He then walked out with him. Duanyi, who was following behind, glanced at the person on the bed and thought to himself, how can he be cured when he's this sick? He really has some skills. Hong, did you hear that? The ghost doctor said that nothing will happen. He said that nothing will happen. Madam He wiped her tears and stayed in the room to accompany her son. At the same time, she shed tears of joy because of Fengjiu's words. He Hong revealed a weak smile, Mother, don't cry. He knew his own situation and knew that he wouldn't be able to live. As for this ghost doctor that his parents had invited, he had never heard of him before. He only believed 30% of his words, especially when he was still so young. How could he completely believe the words of a teenager? Even so, he knew that his parents were worried and could only cooperate. He was neither sad nor happy because he had already prepared for the worst, which was death. Even if the end result was death, he didn't care. However, his heart was still worried about his parents and he couldn't let go of them. He was the only son they had left. Thinking of this, the tears in the corners of his eyes couldn't help but flow out. They dripped onto the pillow and disappeared without a trace. Fengjiu first prescribed a medicine for him and had them boil it. He also had him buy the medicine according to the prescription. Family head He didn't dare delay and quickly ordered his trusted aide to boil the medicine. He picked the medicine that the manor had and personally went out to buy the medicine that they didn't have. Duanyi had been following by Fengjiu's side the entire time. Seeing that she had been busy for half a day, he sat down at the table and asked, Are you sure you can cure him? I don't think it's easy to cure him. I've treated the bone-eroding wind poison before, so it can be cured. However, it took too long for him to fully recover, so it's impossible for him to fully recover in a short period of time. However, After using the medicine, his life can be saved. As for the fire poison in his body and the damage to his body, he can slowly recuperate. She poured a cup of tea and drank it as she explained to him. Hearing this, Duanyi supported his baby face with one hand and looked at him in confusion. You really came from a 7th-ranked country? Fengjiu softly laughed. What? You don't believe me? He nodded his head. How could a small 7th-ranked country have someone like you? He only softly laughed and didn't say anything else. Thus, he didn't ask any more. After an hour, Patriarch walked in quickly with sweat all over his forehead. Ghost Doctor, I've found all the herbs. Find me a quiet courtyard, I will concoct some medicine for you. She stood up and said. Even Duanyi was outside, with. This is a pill. 1 pill a day is enough. You'll be fine after you finish this pill. Telling him. This. Just finish it. She looked at the sky and asked, after a few hours, your son should have a reaction after drinking the medicine, right? Chapter 964. This is normal. He has fire poison in his body, so this is the only way to expel it. Alright, it's getting late, I have to go. As she spoke, she glanced at Duanyi at the side. Duanyi stood up and walked to her side. Hearing that she was about to leave, Patriarch hurriedly said, Ghost Doctor, please wait a moment. As he spoke, he gave an order in a low voice. Not long after, the housekeeper hurriedly brought something over. Ghost Doctor, this is a treasure that I obtained by chance. It's just a token of my respect, I ask the Ghost Doctor to accept it. Fengjiu originally wanted to say no, but when her gaze fell on the red cloth on the tray, her brows slightly moved, asking, what is this? This is the red sky silk, an ancient treasure that my ancestors obtained by chance. It has always been kept in my family. Patriarch said, looking at Fengjiu, saying, the Ghost Doctor saved my son and I have no way to repay you. Knowing that the Ghost Doctor likes red clothes, I thought of this treasure in my house. Today, I present it to the Ghost Doctor, I hope the Ghost Doctor will accept it. Fengjiu's eyes moved, reaching out her hand to take it. Of course she knew about this red sky silk, it was a legendary treasure in the modern era. She never thought that there would be such a thing in the air. Mixed in the silk, it was 7 feet long and could not be cut by swords. It could be used to defend, attack, control, bind enemies, be used as a belt, or be used as a hand to tie the silk. It could be said that this treasure was really not bad. Since it is so, I will accept it. She revealed a smile as she spoke. Good. Patriarch happily nodded, personally sending them out. Even if the red sky silk was an ancient treasure, it was rarely revealed in front of people in their house. The people in their house could not use it, nor did they dare to use it. If one did not have a certain level of strength and influence, who would dare to reveal such a treasure in front of people? Sitting in the carriage, seeing him playing with the red silk called the red sky silk, Duanyi could not help but curl her lips. This red silk is clearly a woman's plaything, I really don't know what good treasure it is. This red silk is indeed not suitable for everyone. Women are not picky, but not many men like this kind of thing. As she spoke, she raised her smiling eyes, however, I happen to like this kind of thing. 2 prescriptions and 1 bottle of medicine are enough to cure that person. His 2 legs are so swollen that it's scary. He frowned as he spoke. He hadn't seen it with his own eyes, so he still didn't quite believe it. However, the he couple treated Fengjiu like a god. They believed whatever he said. It was really strange. Returning to the city lord's mansion, they saw the fatty sitting at the door waiting for the 2 of them. Seeing him, the 2 of them looked at each other. Duanyi went up and asked, Little fatty, why are you sitting here? Don't call me little fatty again. Call me Ning Lang. He glared at Duanyi with dissatisfaction and emphasized again. He then looked at Fengjiu with a fawning expression and said with a smile, "Fengjiu, I have something to tell you. And, let's talk inside." She nodded and walked inside. The two people behind her hurriedly followed. No one noticed that the position of host and guest seemed to have been reversed. Even Duan Yi did not realize that he had unknowingly followed Fengjiu instinctively. Chapter 965. After saying this, he quietly paid attention to Fengjiu's expression. Seeing that his expression did not change, and was still calm, he could not help but secretly feel relieved. Thinking about it, it did not matter if he went or not. If he did not go, they could still find someone else. Well, it should be like this. After Duan Yi heard his words, she glanced at him. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she just looked at Fengjiu, and did not say anything. It doesn't matter, the Hell Mountain Range is really dangerous, it is normal for you to not go. Fengjiu nodded, expressing his understanding. Ha ha ha, I knew you would understand me. He patted his chest and grinned. Actually, I am very busy, I really can't leave, I have a lot of business to manage in the city, and there are also a lot of accounts to settle, I can't do it without me. Well, I know. She smiled and said. That's all for now. I'm going to get busy. I'll accompany you to the city in the afternoon, he said with a happy smile. He got up and waved at the two of them, then walked out as if there was oil under the soles of his feet. After he left, Duan Yi looked at Fengjiu and asked, "How are you going to take him away?" Then, she felt a little strange, why does it have to be him? Fengjiu took out a jade card and shook it in front of him, because of this. Seeing the identity jade card of the 2-Star Academy's instructor, Duan Yi sucked in a mouthful of cold air, her baby face was full of surprise, she stared at him. You are also an instructor of the 2-Star Academy? Does this mean that you had a plan for me to come looking for you? What do you mean premeditated? I just had this plan. She shrugged her shoulders and said, I will tell you directly. Because of a certain matter, I have become an instructor of the 2-Star Academy, however, I am not responsible for teaching the other students of the 2-Star Academy, I am only responsible for you 4 troublesome thorns, for a period of 1 year. Rest assured, after a year, I will take you back to the 2-Star Academy, and at that time, whether you stay in the academy or go home, I will not care about it. The people of the 2-Star Academy don't know that you are the ghost doctor, right? If they knew, he did not believe that they would let him come. Moreover, along the way, he felt that he was an unfathomable and dangerous person, who said that the ghost doctor only knew about medicine and pills. When he killed people, he did not even blink an eye, okay? Fengjiu touched her chin and thought for a moment, and, they should not know. After a while, she stood up and said, okay, you pack up. We'll leave when it gets dark. Otherwise, staying here for too long will cause too much trouble. Seeing him go out, Duan Yi called out, where are you going? I am going to talk to the city's lord. She didn't even turn her head as she waved her hand. She walked to the front and found the steward. The steward led her to the city lord's courtyard. The city lord and madam were in the middle of a discussion when they heard the housekeeper's report. They couldn't help but be startled. They hurriedly got up and went out to welcome the guest. Seeing the red figure in the courtyard, the husband and wife looked at each other and walked forward. Young Master Feng. Do you have any orders for us? Fengjiu smiled, no, I have some things to discuss with the two of you. Chapter 966. Go and call the young master here, the city lord ordered the steward. Yes, the steward responded and quickly went to find Ning Lang. Not long after, Ning Lang came to the courtyard and saw his parents sitting at the table drinking tea. He came to sit beside them and asked, Father, Mother, why are you looking for me? You child, you only care about making money all day long. You don't even know how to take care of your body. Here, this is the soup I asked someone to stew for you. The city lord's wife gestured and pushed the stew on the table in front of him. Mother is so nice, he smiled and squinted his small eyes. He opened it and drank it. When the city lord saw this, he coughed lightly. After he finished drinking, he said, "When you go out, be careful in everything. Listen to young Master Feng. If you encounter something you don't understand, ask. You can't be as willful as you are at home. Think twice before you do anything." Also. Listening to his father's nagging, Ning Lang was a little confused. "Father, why are you telling me this? It's not like I'm going on a long trip." Why did these words sound so baffling? Remember what your father said. Lang, you have to know that money isn't everything. Mother hopes that you can go out and gain experience. When you come back, you can change your greedy nature. Tell me, if your father hands over Ning City to you in the future, with your greedy nature, how can you do it? Not only will you not be able to control the servants, but I'm afraid you won't be able to resist the temptation of money, the city lord's wife said in a deep tone. She looked at him with worry in her eyes. Mother, just. He paused and shook his head. Strange, why do I feel dizzy? He looked at his parents and saw that the two people in front of him had turned into four shadows. He shook his head and tried to see clearly, but he still couldn't see. His head sank and he fell down. Seeing this, the couple looked at each other and sighed softly. They put the things they prepared for him on him and ordered, "Ask a few people to carry the young master into the carriage." Yes, the steward responded and called 2 guards in to carry the young master into the carriage that had been prepared outside. On the other side, Fengjiu and Duanyi also walked out, just in time to see them help the unconscious fatty onto the horse carriage. Seeing this, Duanye's mouth twitched, and he glanced at Fengjiu. He really did what he said and really took her away. At this moment, he strongly suspected that if he didn't agree to go with him, would he also be knocked unconscious and sent to the carriage like this? Thinking about it, it was indeed possible. Young Master Feng, everything is ready. As City Lord Ning spoke, he glanced at the carriage and sighed. He then bowed to Fengjiu and said, "My good-for-nothing son, I'll have to trouble young Master Feng. Rest assured, City Lord." She nodded slightly and got into the carriage with Duanyi. The difference was that this carriage didn't have a driver. The driver could only be Duanyi, who had changed out of his luxurious clothes. Because they quietly left through the back door, this inconspicuous carriage quietly left the city when the city gates closed. Even the other powers in the city didn't notice that they had left. After all, no one would have thought that he had just gone to the He Manor today and left in the evening. Moreover, he left through the back door. Chapter 967. The carriage traveled for an entire night. It wasn't until the next morning that Ning Lang woke up from the shaking of the carriage. The moment he woke up, he remembered what his parents had said and how he had fainted. Almost instinctively, he jumped up at the thought of this. However, because he was caught off guard, his head hit the carriage wall. Bang! Ouch! It hurts. At the same time a loud crash rang out, it was accompanied by the sound of him sucking in a sharp breath and crying out in pain. He covered his forehead with one hand and stared at the red-robed teenager who had his arms crossed over his chest and was resting with his eyes closed. Fengjiu. I already said I'm not going. What right do you have to bring me out? You actually went to encourage my parents to drug me? You're too despicable. He pointed his chubby finger at Fengjiu and cursed. Fengjiu slowly opened his eyes. There was coldness in his indifferent eyes. Ning Lang. With just one glance, Ning Lang felt guilty. He couldn't help but put down the hand he was pointing at Fengjiu. Even his eyes looked evasive. The anger in his belly turned into grievance. He curled his lips and sat down, turning his head away from Fengjiu. I already said I'm not going. Why did you still bring me out? You even used such a despicable method. He muttered softly, but he didn't dare to point at Fengjiu and scold him again. Duanyi, who was driving the carriage outside, heard the commotion in the carriage. His heart moved slightly. The more time he spent with Fengjiu, the more he felt that he couldn't see through him. Sometimes, he felt that he was quite easygoing, as if he could say anything. Sometimes, he felt that he had a strange personality and wasn't easy to get along with. When his face turned cold, the aura on his body was strange and scary. Even he had obediently become a coachman under his orders, not to mention little fatty Ning. From the moment you stepped out of the house, you have to listen to me. Don't cause trouble for me. Otherwise, don't blame me for teaching you a lesson. She said coldly, then closed her eyes and didn't look at him anymore. Ning Lang opened his mouth a few times, but he didn't say anything. He looked at Fengjiu, who was resting with his eyes closed, and thought to himself, I'd better not fight with him. I'll find an opportunity to slip away. I don't believe that I can't go home. Thinking of this, he calmed down. He sat in the carriage and sized it up. Then, he lifted the curtain and saw that Duan Yi was wearing grey clothes. He couldn't help but laugh. Duan Yi, look at what you're wearing. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by others for dressing like this? Duan Yi turned around and glanced at him with a straight face, then glanced at Fengjiu who was resting with his eyes closed, and said, Don't mention my identity as a prince. All right, I won't say any more. He patted his shoulder and looked outside, asking, Where are we going? My whole body is aching from sitting in the carriage. When can we go to the inn to rest? I'll call you when we arrive. He drove the carriage faster. Seeing this, Ning Lang didn't say anything else. He shrunk back into the carriage and stared at Fengjiu, his mind working quickly. About 2 hours later, they entered a town. When they arrived, Duan Yi found an inn and stopped the carriage. He jumped off the carriage and said to the two people in the carriage, We've arrived at the inn. Ning Lang was the first to jump out. His chubby body was quite agile. After getting off the carriage, he stretched and walked into the inn first. Boss, give me 3 of the best rooms. Chapter 968. When the people in the inn heard the voice, they all turned to look at the person who had just arrived. They saw that the person who walked in first was a chubby young man of 15 or 16 years old. He was dressed in an exquisite brocade robe. The golden light from his body made it hard for them to open their eyes. However, all of their gazes were fixed on him. At first glance, they could tell that he was a rich young master from a wealthy family. As they were thinking, they saw a young man in red walk in from behind. His red robe was dazzling like fire. His handsome face and outstanding temperament made people's eyes light up. They couldn't take their eyes off him. The young man exuded an aura of confidence between his brows. His quiet eyes hid a sharpness. His every movement exuded a wanton and ostentatious aura. His elegance and demonic charm blended together. He seemed both righteous and evil. He was incomparably noble. Beside the young man in red was a young man dressed in a grey robe. He had a baby face and looked like a child of 12 or 13 years old. His baby face was also extremely exquisite and outstanding. Although he was dressed in plain and unremarkable clothes, it couldn't hide the noble aura of the young man. It could be assumed that he was also a person of high status. Seeing these 3 people, the people in the inn had different thoughts. What a strange 3 young men. 3 young men with 3 different attitudes. No matter which one it was, they couldn't be compared to the young masters of ordinary families. They really didn't know where these 3 people came from. Why did they look like they didn't have any servants or strong masters protecting them? When the innkeeper of the inn saw the 3 people come in, he naturally knew that these 3 people weren't ordinary young masters. Therefore, he went up enthusiastically and personally greeted them. Ha ha, 3 young masters, please go upstairs. There are rooms upstairs. Ning Lang slightly raised his chin and put his hands behind his back. He walked up the stairs with his feet splayed out. The young man had the attitude of a rich man. As he walked, he told the innkeeper, "I want a quiet room with a good view. Add 2 more layers of mattresses on the bed. It doesn't matter if the room is a little expensive. The most important thing is that I live comfortably." "Yes, yes." The shopkeeper responded with a smile on his face. After leading them to the guest rooms upstairs, he said, "The 3 rooms here are not together. They happen to be independent and close to this side. There is a lake at the back, and the view is excellent. The 3 of you, please take a rest first," the shopkeeper said as he turned around and walked out. He instructed the waiter to lay out 2 more layers of mattresses in their room and served them tea and snacks before leaving. "Fengjiu, Duanyi, we'll rest here tonight. We'll leave tomorrow morning. Don't worry, I'm here. I, Ning Lang, will take care of everything along the way." He lifted his chin slightly and patted his chest. Fengjiu and Duanyi glanced at him before returning to their rooms to rest. After returning to his room, Fengjiu called out Swallow Cloud from the space and patted its head, "Secretly keep an eye on that little fatty." Roar. Tun Yun let out a low howl and went to guard the door. If Ning Lang wanted to leave, it would be able to sense it from here. After the 3 of them ordered food, they asked someone to prepare water for them to take a bath. Then, they returned to their rooms to rest. Duanyi, in particular, had been rushing the carriage since last night and didn't have time to rest. Now that he lay on the bed, he fell asleep in no time. As for Fengjiu, he sat cross-legged and cultivated. Swallow Cloud, who was lying by the door, paid attention to the movements outside. Chapter 969. He softened his footsteps and held his breath as he quietly walked downstairs. When he reached the bottom of the stairs and was about to leave, he was called. "Young master, young master." The innkeeper called out with a smile, but his enthusiastic voice gave Ning Lang a fright. Ning Lang patted his chest and calmed his frightened heart. He turned around and glared at the innkeeper in a low voice, "Why are you so loud? Why are you calling me?" "Huh, young master, according to our inn's rules, you have to pay for the room for half a day in advance. You see." The innkeeper came to his side and said. Hearing this, Ning Lang frowned and said, "Half a day in advance? Are you afraid that we don't have enough money?" "No, no, it's because..." Before the innkeeper could finish, he was interrupted. All right, you can just ask the person in red to pay for the room for half a day later. I still have something to do and need to go out. Don't waste my time." He waved his hand as he spoke, completely forgetting that he had told Fengjiu and Duanyi that he would pay for the entire journey. Or perhaps, he didn't forget at all, but his stingy personality made him happy to earn money. If he wanted to spend money, he would have to think about it. When the shopkeeper heard his words, he was stunned for a moment. He was a little confused as he looked at the chubby young man walking out. He thought that the young man's whole body was shining with golden light. He was rich from head to toe. He was very rich. But who knew that he would not even pay half of the money for the room? He thought, perhaps he didn't have any money on him. He shook off this thought as soon as it appeared. How could such a young man not have any money on him? At this moment, he saw a little beast follow him out. He couldn't help but be stunned. Whose little beast? When did it come in? However, before he could regain his senses, the man and the beast had already disappeared. Shaking his head, he was just about to return to the counter when he saw the red-robed young man come down. Smiling, he walked up to him and said, "Young master, that young master just now said that you can pay for the room. According to the rules of the inn, when you check in, you have to pay for half a day's room first. What do you think?" He rubbed his hands together and looked at the red-robed young man with a smile. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and curled his lips, revealing a devilish smile. "He said he wants me to pay for the room?" "Yes." The shopkeeper nodded. Fengzhou's smile deepened. He took out 2 gold coins and tossed them to him. Is that enough? Enough, enough. The shopkeeper's face was full of smiles as he hurriedly nodded and smiled. Fengzhou smiled and strode out. Relying on his contract with Devouring Cloud, he unhurriedly followed behind. At this moment, Ning Lang didn't know that he was being watched not long after he left the inn. It wasn't Devouring Cloud who was secretly following behind him, nor was it Fengzhou. It was a few independent cultivators. It could be said that they were being watched from the moment they entered the inn. The red-robed young man was handsome and devilish. The baby-faced young man had an air of nobility. As for the chubby little fatty, he had an air of wealth. His glittering gold outfit seemed to be telling others that he was rich, very rich. In addition, he didn't have any bodyguards accompanying him to protect him. He was only 15 or 16 years old. Naturally, he became a target. Chapter 970. Could it be that Fengzhou and Duanyi discovered that I've snuck away? As soon as this thought appeared, his back stiffened. Even his limbs stiffened as he walked. However, after walking for a while, he still couldn't hear their voices. Something didn't seem right. If the 2 of them saw that he had snuck away, they would definitely stop him. Then, it wasn't them. Who's there? What are you sneaking around for? Bang! He abruptly turned his head and shouted. Who would have thought that when he turned his head, it wasn't someone's voice that responded to him. Instead, it was a heavy blow that came down on his face. The speed of the blow was so fast that he didn't even have time to dodge. He didn't even see who attacked him before he fainted. In the corner, Tun Yun was about to pounce out when Fengzhou stopped her. She carried Tun Yun in her arms and retreated slightly. She watched as the cultivators looked around before they carried Ning Lang away. Seeing this, she curled her lips into a smile and quietly followed behind those people. This little fatty was shrewd, but unfortunately, he was inexperienced and wasn't vigilant enough. He was only in the early stage of foundation establishment. When he encountered a rogue cultivator with a higher cultivation than him, he was completely defenseless. Oh, no, it should be said that he didn't even have the chance to fight back. He fainted immediately after being hit by the club. She followed them to a slum. This was a place where the poor, rogue cultivators with missing arms and legs, as well as some extremely vicious people lived. Groups of burly men squatted on the ground in the streets and alleys. Some of them held wine jugs in their hands as they drank, while others sat in a circle and gambled. When she walked in, dressed in red, these people's gazes fell on her. They followed her closely, sizing her up and probing her. The poor commoners only had a few elderly and children left. Young women couldn't stay in a place like this because it was too chaotic. As a result, it could be said that there wasn't a single woman in this place. Of course, there were only a few fat and ferocious-looking female cultivators. Due to the poverty of this area, the place appeared to be somewhat dirty and messy. Garbage could be seen everywhere on the streets and alleys. The dilapidated houses had a faint feeling of looseness, as if they would collapse with a strong push. It looked very dangerous. As she walked with Tun Yun in her arms, her divine sense locked onto the few people who were carrying Ning Lang in front of her. Thus, she was not afraid that she would not be able to find them. Her pace was not fast, and she looked around from time to time. She frowned when she saw 2 4- or 5-year-old children playing with bare feet under the wall. This world was just so unfair. Some people lived in luxurious palaces, while others didn't even have a place to stay. Some people ate delicacies, while others starved and became as thin as a match. You too, come here. She stopped and waved her hand with a smile, indicating for the 2 children to come over. Although the 2 children were only 4 or 5 years old, they were still on guard. They looked at the cute little pet in Fengzhou's arms with envy and curiosity in their eyes, but they didn't dare to go over. Instead, they leaned against the wall and scratched the wall with their fingers. From time to time, they would sneak glances at Fengjiu. Seeing this, Fengjiu took out a box of desserts from his space and took out a piece. "Look, I have desserts. Come over and I'll give it to you." Chapter 971. Seeing this, Fengjiu's lips curled into a smile. "Don't play by that wall in the future, okay?" The two children nodded as if they understood. They stared fixedly at the pastries in her hands and gulped. "Here, this is for you." She saw that the two children's hands were very dirty, so she didn't hand them directly. Instead, she put the pastries back into the box and handed the box of pastries to the two children. "Take it home and eat it." The two children seemed to be in disbelief. They stared blankly at the godlike person in front of them and couldn't help but ask in a small voice, Are you giving it to us?" "Yes, it's all for you." She placed the pastries in their hands and said, "Go home." The two children smiled happily. After receiving the pastries, they quickly ran away without even thanking her, as if they were afraid that she would go back on her word. Feng Jiu smiled, and only then did she lead Tun Yun in search of those people. In a dilapidated mud house, a few strong men threw Ning Lang onto the ground. One of them panted and wiped his sweat. "This kid is as heavy as a pig. I'm exhausted after carrying him for so long. Hurry up and take off all the valuable things from him," another person said. As the other person spoke, he had already started rummaging through Ning Lang's body. He took off his jade pendant, golden belt, and the rings on his fingers. The three of them then began to divide the items among themselves. "This kid has quite a lot of things on him. Come, this is for you. This is mine. This is for you." Fengjiu peeked through the crack in the wall and watched the three of them divide the loot. Then, he glanced at the unconscious Ning Lang and shook his head helplessly. "This kid's clothes should be worth quite a lot of money if we sell them. Let's take off his clothes and sell him. We can still make a profit," one of them suggested. "That's right. The material of these clothes is very valuable. After we take them off, give him a piece and quickly sell it." Another person nodded in agreement. As a result, the three of them really did take off all of his clothes. Then, they found an old and smelly set of clothes and put it on him. "Since it's still early, let's put him in a sack and sell him. We'll take the small paths and alleys so that we won't attract any attention." As they spoke, the three of them found a sack and put Ning Lang in it. Then, they carried him on their shoulders and were about to leave. However, when the door opened, they were startled. In front of the dilapidated door stood a man in red with a white pet in his arms. His handsome face, evil aura, and noble temperament formed a strong contrast with the dilapidated house. It was as if an immortal had fallen into the mortal world by mistake. No matter how one looked at it, he did not belong here, nor did he belong to this dilapidated slum. However, the three of them quickly regained their senses after being startled. The three of them glared at him with dark and ferocious faces and shouted, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Actually, they recognized him. He was in the same group as the fat man. They had come in the same carriage. However, they did not expect the young man in red to find this place. How did he find his way here? They did not even know that he was following them. Chapter 972. Hearing this, they stared at him warily. One of them clenched his fists and suddenly stepped forward to throw a punch. "Since you're here, I'll take care of you too." However, the fist that contained hidden power was kicked away by Fengjiu before it could even touch her. His entire body flew backward and crashed into the things in the room before falling directly to the ground. Perhaps because he couldn't catch his breath, he actually lay flat on the ground with his eyes wide open. After a while, he finally got up. "Go!" With a fierce shout, Ning Lang, who was originally carried on his shoulder, was also thrown directly to the ground. The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard. The three of them surrounded Fengjiu together. Their attacks were swift and fierce, faintly containing killing intent. However, among the three of them, two of them were in the early stage of the foundation establishment stage, while the other was in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. They could deal with Ning Lang, but against Fengjiu, they were not just a little bit weaker. The three of them only saw a red shadow sweep past, and a powerful and fierce aura instantly filled the small earthen room. The aura of a golden core cultivator shocked the three of them, and their faces turned pale. The other party's speed was too fast, and they couldn't even resist. They instinctively wanted to escape, but the door in front of them was blocked by the red-clothed youth. One of them flew, intending to escape through the broken window at the back. Unexpectedly, just as he was about to flee through the window, a low growl sounded. Swallowing Cloud instantly pounced out and bit that person's calf, directly dragging him back. Hiss! Ah! My leg! Fresh blood seeped out, and the aura of death enveloped them, causing their hearts to tremble. They looked at the red-clothed youth who was leaning against the door with his arms crossed over his chest in fear and shock. We'll return the things to you. We'll return the people to you. Don't kill us, don't kill us. The three of them panicked and took out all the things they had on them and piled them on the ground. Things like gold belts, gold and jade rings, jade pendants, and the like were all piled up on the ground one by one, forming a small mountain of things. Compared to money, they wanted to live more. If they didn't even have their lives, it would be useless no matter how much money they had. Not running anymore. Fengjiu glanced at them. His lazy voice was cold. Don't run, don't run. The three of them hurriedly said, looking at the young man in front of them, their hearts trembling with fear. Tun Yun let go of the man's leg and bared its sharp teeth as it let out a low threatening growl. Only then did it return to Fengjiu's side. Have you shaken off everything on your body? It's all clean. We've even taken out all the things we had before. There's really nothing left. The three of them hurriedly spoke as they flipped through their clothes for him to see, proving that they didn't dare to leave anything on their bodies that the fatty was afraid of. Just now, you said you were going to sell him. Where in the city is there human trafficking? She raised her eyebrows and asked. When the three of them heard this, their hearts trembled. No, we don't dare to sell him, we don't dare to sell him. I'm asking you a question. Where are the buyers and sellers? What kind of people were buying and selling people? Speak clearly. Seeing that he wasn't going to blame them, the three of them gathered their courage and said, it's the underground market in the city. There's a slave market there. We originally wanted to sell him to make some money. Hearing this, Fengjiu curled his lips and said with a smile, if that's the case, then do as you originally planned. The three of them were stunned and asked, what do you mean? Chapter 973. Seeing that the three of them were stunned on the spot, she said again, that's right, sell him according to your original plan. After selling him, I'll give you the money. Anyway, hurry up and sell him. Hurry up and carry him away, in case he wakes up later. Seeing that she was not joking, the three of them could only hurriedly get up and carry the fat man in the sack. Just as they were about to carry him out, they heard the young man in red's voice again. Wait. Fengjiu seemed to have thought of something. He walked forward and said, put him down first. The three of them did not dare to ask and hurriedly did as he said. They opened the sack, revealing the fat man in tattered clothes. Seeing the unconscious fat man, Fengjiu curled his lips. With a flick of his finger, he used a silver needle to seal the spiritual aura in the fat man's body. Then, he said, all right, carry him away. Yes. The three of them looked at each other and were secretly shocked. They hurriedly carried the fat man and limped out. Fengjiu put everything on the ground into a Qinkuan bag and put it into the space. Then, he took Tun Yun and followed behind the three of them. Didn't he want to slip away? She wanted to see how Ning Lang would react when he woke up and found out that he had been sold. The three brawny men knew that the red-robed young man was following them, so they didn't dare to delay. They directly carried the red-robed young man to the underground market and found the manager who was in charge of the transaction. "We'll sell this person to you. Give us a price." The three of them wanted to leave, but when they thought of how they had emptied their family's savings, they resisted the urge to leave. They thought that they could at least earn some money back. "Who are you?" The manager glanced at them and kicked them. He looked at the three of them and asked, "Is it a man? Men aren't worth much here." The three of them gulped and said, "It's a young man. He's fair and chubby and is quite likable. Take a look at the goods first." As they spoke, they opened the sack and revealed Ning Lang's head. The in-charge went forward to take a look. The 15 or 16-year-old youth was indeed fair and chubby with a face full of good fortune. He didn't have any aura of spiritual power on him, so he thought that he was probably a child from an ordinary family. Thus, he nodded. "This fellow looks all right. How about this? I'll give you 200 silver coins." 200 silver coins. The three of them were stunned. Then, they said, "This fellow is so good, he's not worth 200 silver coins. We don't want much. Just add another 100 silver coins. Just enough for us 300 silver coins." Hearing this, the steward glanced at the three of them and waved his hand. "All right, I'll give you 300 silver coins. Go over there and get the money." As he spoke, he waved his hand and called for a person to come over, and the three of them went over there to get the money. In his days, Ning Lang seemed to have heard them discussing some goods that were worth 300 silver coins. When he heard that there was business, his dazed mind instantly sobered up. He immediately asked, "What goods? Let me take a look." The manager who stood to the side. "A little fatty like you dares to call yourself a young master? Stop daydreaming." As he spoke, he raised his voice and shouted, "Two of you, wash this fellow and change his clothes. Then, lock him up with the other young men." Ning Lang was stunned. He jumped up. "What are you talking about? Lock him up with what?" As soon as he ran out of the sack, he was held down. Chapter 974. Ning Lang was dumbfounded. He was stunned and in disbelief. 300 silver coins. Who sold me out? I'm only worth 300 silver coins. Are you kidding me? Come back. That skinny guy who's as thin as a monkey, come back. Come back and explain yourself." The steward, who had already walked a few meters away, heard the words coming from behind him. His face darkened. He turned around and walked forward with his hands behind his back. He stared at Ning Lang gloomily. "Fatty, who did you say looked like a monkey just now?" Ning Lang was also someone who knew how to read the situation. Seeing this skinny guy's gloomy face, he couldn't help but be secretly shocked. The other party was a cultivator in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. He didn't dare to provoke him. He steadied his mind and said, "Let me go. I can give you money." The steward looked him up and down, his eyes full of contempt and disdain. "Give me money? You're only left with this fat and this shabby smelly clothes. Where did you get the money?" He glared angrily. Just as he was about to speak, he finally realized that something was wrong. The spiritual power in his body seemed to have completely disappeared. He was like an ordinary person. His foundation establishment realm cultivation seemed to have completely disappeared. This made him a little flustered, and he swallowed the words he wanted to say. He was the young master of Ning City, and his net worth was unimaginable. However, if he told these people his identity, wouldn't he be in more danger? Just as he was thinking, the steward waved his hand, "Take him away and watch him carefully. There's an auction tonight. When the time comes, send them all up. This kid is white and fat. I believe there will be people who like him." Hearing this, Ning Lang's eyes widened. "What do you mean by that?" "I'm warning you, don't mess around. You'd better let me go quickly, or you'll regret it. Do you hear me? Let me go quickly." "Let you go? Dream on." The steward pinched his chubby face with a smile. "Fatty, it seems that you usually eat well. You've grown more fat than others. Old thing, how dare you take advantage of your grandfather? Is my face something you can pinch?" Ning Lang was enraged. Since his hands were held down, he lifted his leg and kicked. Fortunately, the steward dodged quickly. Otherwise, his crotch would have been kicked. The steward, who had dodged the punch, had a dark expression on his face. He clenched his fists and rubbed them against each other, making cracking sounds. The next moment, he swung his fist and punched Ning Lang hard in the stomach. With a bang, Ning Lang let out a muffled groan. His face turned red and his body shrunk slightly. It was as if he couldn't catch his breath and couldn't speak for a long time. "You still dare to be wild here? I think you need to be taught a lesson. Don't worry about him for now. Lock him up in the 9th cage to temper his spirit. I want to see how wild he can be in the 9th cage." He gave a heavy snort, flicked his sleeves, and left. The two burly men brought Ning Lang, who had curled up into a ball, to the cage marked with the word 9. They opened the iron cage, pushed him in, and locked it. "What are you doing? Let me out. Let me out. Bastard. Let me out." Chapter 975. In this iron cage that was only the size of a small room, there were 11 ferocious-looking strong men either squatting or sitting. These people were bare-armed and only wore a pair of shorts. Their arms, waists, and abdomens were muscular, and the scars on their bodies were crisscrossed. Each of them looked like a bloodthirsty demon. At this moment, these people were staring at him with unkind eyes. Ning Lang, who was originally shouting and cursing, saw that the situation was not right. He could not help but shrink into a corner and look at them vigilantly. The big man sitting in the middle raised his chin and signaled. The strong men on both sides stood up, clenched their fists, cracked their necks, and approached step by step. What do you want to do?" Ning Lang retreated, but found that there was nowhere to go. "What do we want to do? Since you're here, of course, we have to teach you the rules." One of them snorted coldly. Two figures stepped forward and grabbed Ning Lang's shoulders, one on the left and one on the right. They twisted Ning Lang's hands and pushed him forward. "Don't mess around. I have money. I can give you money," he said hurriedly. "Money? Ha ha, what a joke. What do we need money for?" The man laughed out loud. Unexpectedly, he clenched his fist and punched Ning Lang's abdomen. He leaned close to Ning Lang's ear and said, "Little fatty, let your grandfather teach you a lesson. In this place, money is useless to us. Do you understand? As long as you're strong, you'll be the boss even in this cage." Bang! As he spoke, another punch landed. He beat Ning Lang like a sandbag. One punch after another, one punch after another. The force was mixed with hidden force. Bang! 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 Ning Lang's painful cries and muffled groans rang out in the iron cage and spread to the surroundings. However, this kind of thing was too common in this place. No one cared at all. They were just watching a good show. After all, they were not the ones being beaten. "Ah! Stop hitting me!" His face was red, and there were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. Because he was being pulled into the iron cage, there were a few bruises on his face. The pain in his body made him curl up. The people here were either great spiritual masters, great martial masters, or foundation-building cultivators. He did not have spiritual power now. Even if he did, he could not beat so many people alone. In the past, no one dared to beat him up no matter where he was. Today, he was caught and sold here. He was even beaten up. He was angry and sullen in his heart. For the first time, he realized that he had left home and no one to protect him. He could not protect himself. Just as these people had said, there was no point in asking for money when they were locked up in such a place. For the first time in his life, his heart wavered. Of his teeth. In the dark, Fengjiu watched this scene quietly. She watched him curl up on the ground with his head in his hands like a small animal. She saw the anger and sullenness in his eyes. She saw the confusion in his eyes. She didn't step forward, nor did she stop them, because those people's beatings were only superficial wounds and wouldn't be fatal. She wanted to teach him a lesson, give him a warning, and let him understand why he was in such a situation. Chapter 976. She retracted her gaze and turned towards the manager of the underground market on the other side. She asked, "Are you in charge of this place?" The manager was drinking tea when he suddenly heard this voice. He raised his head to take a look and saw that the young man was handsome and had an extraordinary temperament. He then put down the teacup in his hand and asked with a smile, "I am in charge of all the goods here. Does young master want to buy a few servants? What do you want? I can get someone to introduce them to young master." Fengjiu looked at him and said, "Keep an eye on the little fatty that was just sent here. Don't kill or cripple him." Hearing this, the manager's smile disappeared. He looked at him from head to toe and asked, "Young master, what do you mean by this? Don't you understand? He is one of my people. I want to borrow your hands to teach him a lesson. But don't kill or cripple him. Do you understand now?" He, young master really knows how to joke. All the goods here are bought with money. Just now we bought a little fatty, but how can he be one of young master's people? Moreover, that little fatty is of great use to us. We bought him for 300 silver coins. If we sell him, it will be more than 300 silver coins. Fengjiu curled his lips. "You are not the one making the decisions here. Go. Call out the person in charge." Hearing this, he was unhappy and his face darkened. Where did this little brat come from? Don't you know where you are? How dare you come here and cause trouble? Men! Throw him out. Get out. The four cultivators surrounded Fengjiu, and one of them stepped forward, wanting to grab Fengjiu's collar and drag him out. Unexpectedly, the young man lazily looked up, and his cold eyes were filled with pressure. The aura and pressure of an expert spread out in an instant, and the cultivator only felt a wave of killing intent. Cold fear surged from the soles of his feet to his heart. The strong impact and pressure made him tremble, and at the same time, cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. His legs went soft, and he fell to the ground with a bang. All of the people present were cultivators, and there were even 2 foundation establishment cultivators among them. Even the steward was a mid-foundation establishment cultivator. When they saw the pressure released by the red-clothed youth, they were extremely shocked, and their eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. How could a 16 or 17-year-old young man have such a terrifying pressure and aura? What was the background of this young man? "You, who are you?" The manager knew that the other party was not ordinary. He did not dare to fight force with force and could only ask in a trembling voice. A golden core cultivator was not frightening. However, a 16 or 17-year-old golden core cultivator was extremely frightening. What kind of talent did he have to be able to cultivate to the golden core stage at the age of 16 or 17? Fengjiu lazily glanced at him. His indifferent voice was cold. "You don't have the right to know." If he had heard this just now, the manager would definitely have scolded him. However, at this moment, seeing that he had made a foundation establishment cultivator fall to the ground without even lifting a finger, he did not dare to show any signs of neglect or dissatisfaction. This was how the world worked. If you displayed great strength, you would naturally receive the respect and courtesy of others. As for the weak, no one would take them seriously. Chapter 977. Young master, have some tea first. I'll go invite the chairman. As the steward spoke, he had someone bring him some tea before retreating. Fengjiu tapped the table lightly with one hand, making a knocking sound. She looked around the hall and felt the presence of two auras. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Tun Yun lay by her feet without moving, as obedient and docile as a kitten. The servant brought the tea and retreated. There was no one else here, so it was rather quiet. She picked up the tea and took a sip, sitting quietly as she waited. Not long after, she saw a middle-aged man walk in under the steward's lead. "Young master, this is the chairman of our underground market," the steward said, then retreated to the side. The middle-aged man had been sizing up Fengjiu from the moment he stepped into the hall. It could be said that he recognized who she was at first glance. While he was pleasantly surprised, he was also puzzled. Why had the ghost doctor come to their place? "I didn't know it was young Master Feng. My apologies, my apologies." He cupped his hands in greeting and looked at Fengjiu with a face full of smiles. His gaze was fervent as he asked, "May I know why young Master Feng is here? If there's anything this Lin can help with, please don't hesitate to ask. This Lin will definitely not refuse." When the steward saw the chairman's fervent and fawning attitude and tone, he couldn't help but be shocked. His legs turned to jelly. He wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead as he stole glances at the red-clothed youth, trying to guess his identity. What young Master Feng? The chairman didn't even have such a good attitude and tone when meeting the family heads of some of the clans in the city. Why was he like this when facing this youth? Who was this person? Thinking about how he had almost offended him, he couldn't help but lower his head and quietly retreat. He didn't dare to appear in front of him again, in case he mentioned what had just happened. If that happened, he would be in trouble. She didn't find it strange that the president here recognized her. The black market had told her that her portrait had been circulated among the various forces and family heads. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to recognize her, but those in charge would definitely have her portrait in their hands. Thinking about how these people kept her portrait, she sighed in her heart. She felt strange, as if she was a wanted criminal. "I was just passing by and happened to run into some trouble. I'll have to trouble President Lin." She spoke slowly while sizing up the person sitting in the main seat. When he heard this, he was a little surprised. He didn't expect that there really was a problem. After all, he knew that the relationship between the ghost doctor and the black market was not ordinary, and there was a branch of the black market in this city. He thought that even if there was a problem, he would go to the black market. He did not expect that there would be something that would require his help. For a moment, he was overjoyed and asked, "What is it?" "Young Master Feng, please speak your mind." "It's like this, I have a friend." She explained the situation simply, wanting to use this opportunity to give the fatty a warning and an unforgettable experience. Hearing her words, President Lin nodded and said with a smile, "This is a small matter. Young Master Feng, don't worry. I'll arrange it in a moment. Young Master Feng's friend is here, don't worry. I'll have people keep an eye on him. There won't be any big problems." Chapter 978. Young Master Feng is too polite. He stood up and returned the greeting, asking, "It's inconvenient for young Master Feng to stay in the inn now. Do you want me to arrange a place for young Master Feng to stay? We won't be staying here for long, so there's no need to trouble yourself." "All right then. I'll see young Master Feng out." As he spoke, he personally saw him out. Only after he left did he take a look at cage number 9. Seeing that the chubby young man was beaten black and blue, with a face full of grievance and anger, his eyes couldn't help but flash. If the ghost doctor didn't mention it, he wouldn't have been able to tell that this little fatty in shabby clothes was actually the son of Tsang country's #1 rich man, Ning Yuan, Ning Lang. He had some friendship with Ning Yuan, but he had never seen his son before. He didn't expect it to be under such circumstances. Seeing the kid's face full of grief and anger, he smiled, shook his head, and walked away. It was time for him to suffer a little. President. The steward walked up and looked at him fawningly. Keep an eye on that little fatty. He's the son of an old friend of mine. Hearing this, the steward was shocked. Thinking that he had beaten up that little fatty earlier, he couldn't help but break out in cold sweat, asking, Then should I bring that little young master out? No need, just let him stay there. Don't let him know that there's any special treatment for him. Do what you should do. However, he can't have any major problems, otherwise, you won't be forgiven. He said in a low voice, his words carrying a hint of warning. Yes, yes. The steward hurriedly responded. After he left, he was so scared that he sat on the ground. Why was he so unlucky today? Shocks came one after another. His heart couldn't take it anymore. It was all those 3 people's fault. They actually caused him such trouble. On the other side, when Fengjiu returned to the inn, Duan Yi was already waiting on the first floor. Seeing that Fengjiu had returned, he asked, Did little fatty really run away? He ran away. She nodded and smiled. She sat down at the table and poured herself a cup of water to drink. You didn't catch up to him? That's impossible. With his skills, he couldn't catch up to Ning Lang. I caught up to him, but I didn't bring him back. Why didn't you bring him back? He asked in confusion. Fengjiu smirked. Because he was sold and locked up in a cage. What? Was he sold? His voice was so loud that the surrounding people looked over in shock. Duan Yi ignored the others on the first floor. Instead, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, How did he get sold? In any case, he was a foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, that brat was very smart. It's possible that he sold it to someone else, but how could he be sold by someone else? I followed him from behind and saw that he was targeted as soon as he left the inn. That brat also walked through a small alley and was knocked unconscious by 3 cultivators with wooden clubs and carried away. After that, he was sent to the underground market to be sold as goods. She said nonchalantly. When she thought of the miserable look on the little fatty's face after being beaten up, she couldn't help but smile. Someone had to teach him a lesson. Duan Yi was a little stunned when he heard that. He stared at him with a strange gaze. What do you want to do? Don't tell me you want to take the opportunity to teach him a lesson. Knowing that he was sold, he didn't save him and was still smiling here. What was he up to now? Chapter 979. Duan Yi slapped his hand away and glared at him. Don't get physical with each other. Ha 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 ha. Fengjiu laughed and patted him on the shoulder. That's why I said that you're tactful. Hearing this, Duan Yi's mouth twitched. He was tactful, or else he would have been tortured by him. Alright, he didn't deny this point. Other than Little Fatty, the other 2 were not as easy to fool as Little Fatty. Just like that, they settled down in the inn with good food and good accommodation. As for Ning Lang, he was locked in a cage and starved for a day. Until the next morning, he was brought to the mountain behind the underground market to mine ores and move them around. The sun was shining on his head and his back was sweaty. The skin on his hands and feet were scraped and blistered. He was so hungry and tired that his whole body ached. The bruises on his face had not subsided and were stained with dust. He was in a very sorry state. Woo! I quit. I don't have any strength. I can't move. He sat down on a rock and cried like a child. Father, mother, sob sob. Save me. The people outside are not good people. It's too dangerous outside. I've been sold. Sob. Father, mother, I want to go home. Shio. A whip lashed out with a swoosh and landed on a rock beside him with a smack. A stern voice rang out, what are you howling for? Get up and continue working. Woo. I haven't eaten. My stomach, I can't move. Ning Lang sniffed and shrank his body. He looked at the fierce-looking man. He had been beaten up since yesterday and was a little scared. Who dared to beat him at home in the past? Sure enough, the people outside were not good people. The outside world was too dangerous. It was safer to hide at home. Hungry? Come with me. The man glanced at him and turned to leave. Hearing this, Ning Lang quickly stood up and limped along with him until they came to a small shed. He saw the man scoop a bowl of food from a bucket and handed it over. Eat. Hurry up and do your work after eating. Ning Lang reached out and took it. When he saw the bowl of porridge that couldn't be any thinner and had a strange taste, his face was full of shock. This is for pigs. How could this be eaten by humans? Can this fill our stomachs? You're still complaining? The burly man snorted and looked at him contemptuously. People like you who want to be capable but don't have the ability can only do some heavy work and eat the leftovers. What do you mean I'm not capable? I know how to do business, I know how to do accounts, I know how to make money. I'm still an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. He wiped his tears and roared in dissatisfaction. Business? Settle accounts? Make money? An early-stage foundation establishment cultivator? Chi. He sneered and said, brat, let your grandpa teach you. In this world, only the strong are respected. No matter how good you are at doing business, no matter how much money you earn, with your meager early foundation establishment cultivation, can you protect yourself? As long as someone is stronger than you, they can take your life at any time and take your hard-earned money. Do you understand? Only strength is the most reliable. Chapter 980. Looking at the little fatty in front of him who was in a daze, the burly man had a fierce expression on his face, but he was cursing in his heart. His superiors didn't give him any tasks, but they gave him such a lousy task. He couldn't hit, touch, or knock into anything, and he had to teach him like a son. He had never received such a task before. This was even more frustrating than having him carry a big rock. Are you going to drink it or not? If you don't, go back and carry a rock. The burly man shouted in a rough voice and glared at him. Ning Lang bit his lip with tears in his eyes. He punched the bowl with a missing corner with both hands, feeling very wronged. His servants didn't even use such a broken bowl, nor did they drink such thin porridge. However, he was doing heavy work, and this was the only thing he could eat. Do you have steamed buns or something like that? I won't be full if I eat like this. No, it's up to you whether you want to eat or not. The burly man glared and shouted. If it were any other time, he would have lashed out with the whip. Rumble. His stomach growled. Ning Lang looked at the bowl in his hand and could only drink it with his eyes closed. After drinking the bowl, he felt as if he had drunk a bowl of water. He licked the corner of his mouth and stared at the bucket. I want more. Although it wasn't delicious, it was better than being hungry. More. Where do you think this is? No more, go to work. The burly man snatched the bowl from his hand and put it behind him. He pushed him forward. Go to work. Ning Lang glared at him. Why can't you let me have enough of this thin porridge? Pfft. Don't think about it. It's fine as long as you don't starve to death. You want to drink enough. Do you think this is your home? The big man gave him a shove, and the whip in his hand lashed at his side. Go! Ning Lang gritted his teeth and glared at him. He thought to himself, just you wait. When I get out of here, I'll teach you a lesson. At a place not far away, Feng Jiu and Duan Yi were watching, and the two of them had different expressions when they saw this scene. The former was teasing, while the latter was shocked. How long do you plan to keep him here? Duan Yi looked at Feng Jiu and asked. When he can't take it anymore. She curled her lips. It seems that he still has some strength now. The corners of Duan Yi's mouth twitched when he heard that. He looked at Ning Lang, who was being ordered to move rocks. He was wearing tattered clothes and a pair of broken shoes. His hair was disheveled and his face was bruised and swollen. Who told him to sell out his identity as the ghost doctor the moment he saw Feng Jiu? From the moment he found out about that matter, he knew that this brat would suffer. He didn't expect that this brat would be waiting for him here. Let's go. Let's find a place to drink. Feng Jiu called Duan Yi and turned to leave. They came and left quietly, and Ning Lang, who was not far away, did not know anything. 3 days later, in the morning, Ning Lang, who was still sleeping, was woken up by the two of them. They dragged him to the bathroom, changed him into a set of luxurious clothes, and dressed him from head to toe. Ning Lang was shocked from beginning to end. When he saw someone putting powder on his pale face that was thinner than a few days ago, he couldn't help but cry out. What do you want? What do we want? There are people coming to the brothel to pick young people. They like people like you who are 15 or 16 years old. Just right, we can sell you at a high price. The manager who walked in said with a smile, but his heart was weak. Chapter 981. You don't want it. Even if you don't want it, you still have to take it. The steward gestured for someone to escort him to the front, while he wiped off his sweat and hurriedly followed behind. No, I don't want to be sold to a brothel, I want to go home, I want to go home. He struggled and shouted, but he had not eaten for a few days, and his cultivation was sealed, so he appeared to be weak and powerless, and was forcefully escorted forward by 2 cultivators. When he reached the front of the field, he was once again locked into a metal cage. In this metal cage, there were 5 to 6 youths who were 15 to 16 years old, and their appearances were more outstanding than the average youths. Furthermore, they were all dressed up, all wearing new clothes, and looked neat and tidy. He looked at the few youths, and could not help but have a worried expression. Don't tell me I really have to be sold to those places. Just as he was feeling uneasy, he suddenly saw 2 familiar figures. Seeing them, his eyes immediately surged with joy, and both his hands tightly grasped the door of the metal cage, shouting outside, Feng Jiu. Feng Jiu. Duan Yi, save me, save me. I'm here, I'm here. The 2 people who were talking seemed to have inadvertently heard him, and turned around to look. When their gazes landed on the figure locked in the metal cage, Duan Yi took large strides forward, and Feng Jiu slowed down by half a step. Little fatty. Why are you here? Duan Yi looked at the person locked in the cage with a face full of astonishment, as if he did not know anything, and asked in confusion and astonishment. Wu. Duan Yi, I've been sold. His eyes reddened, and looked at Feng Jiu, who was slowly walking over. Feng Jiu, I shouldn't have snuck away, these people aren't good people, they didn't even give me food to eat, and even made me do heavy work, look at my blisters. Feng Jiu stopped in front of the metal cage, and looked at the youth who had obviously lost weight in the past few days, and asked with a smile, why didn't you tell them that you have money, and ask them to let you go? I did, but they didn't believe me. He said in grievance. Don't you also have a certain level of cultivation to protect yourself? Why didn't you escape? I can't escape, my cultivation has been sealed. Seeing that he was clearly smiling, but there was no smile in his eyes, and seeing that he did not say that he would save him, he could not help but feel fearful. Feng Jiu, you'll save me, right? From the moment you escaped, I had nothing to do with you. Perhaps you can escape with your own abilities. No, I can't get out. He slightly lowered his head, somewhat not daring to meet his eyes. Save me and get me out. Ait. Are you obedient now? She raised her eyebrows and asked, Teet test, Teet, where? Teet, why are you still here? Are you looking for me? Ning Lang looked at Duan Yi who was standing outside and asked. Duan Yi glanced at him, and said, No, Fengjiu said that there's no need to look for you since you've left. We heard that there's a local market here today, so we came to take a look. Ning Lang was silent, and lowered his head. Not long after, Ning Lang saw the manager who was as skinny as a monkey trotting over, bending over with a fawning expression as he followed Fengjiu. Seeing this completely different attitude, he sighed in his heart. Chapter 982. They brought him to the restaurant and ordered 12 dishes. Before all the dishes were served, they saw Ning Lang sitting down with a starving look on his face. He scooped a spoonful of rice and began to eat in big mouthfuls, not even bothering to speak to the other two. Fengjiu and Duan Yi looked at each other and also sat down at the table. The two only drank wine and didn't eat much. An hour later, Ning Lang took a breath and finally put down his chopsticks. Are you full? Fengjiu asked with a smile. I'm full. He rubbed his stomach and burped. This is the fullest and most delicious meal I've ever had. As soon as he finished speaking, he paused for a moment and looked at the two of them. I thought you guys had left, I thought you guys were really going to be sold to a brothel. Those people, I told them I was from the Ning family and that my family's wealth was comparable to a country's, but they didn't believe me. As he spoke, his face turned gloomy. Everything I have on me has been stolen by those people. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him, then threw a qianquan bag to him. Your things are all here. All right, let's go if you're full. We've already been delayed here for a few days. Ning Lang was stunned. He opened it and couldn't help but be astonished. It's really my treasures. Why are they in your? He wanted to ask, but he saw that Fengjiu and Duan Yi had already walked out. Even the white ball pet had already followed them. At that moment, he hurriedly put away the qianquan bag and followed them down. After the three of them left the city gate, they directly threw out their magic tools and flew towards the next second-class country. About 2 days later, they arrived at a town in another country that was adjacent to the Tsang country. Aren't we going to the Hell Mountain Range? Why are we here? Ning Lang followed beside Fengjiu. Looking at the red-clothed man walking leisurely, he was a little confused. For the past 2 days, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was not quite right. However, he could not figure out what was wrong. It was true that he had saved him, but how did his things end up with him? They had arrived at the inn together. He also knew that Fengjiu and Duan Yi had not gone out at that time, so it was naturally impossible for them to find someone to deal with him in that short period of time. But after thinking about it, he still felt that he had been tricked. However, due to his coldness, he did not dare to ask about this matter again. I'm here to find someone, Song Ming. Fengjiu said and entered the city with them. Looking at the bustling city, her gaze fell on a tea stall in front of them. Let's go have a cup of tea first. Little Tun Yun obediently followed behind her with the other two following behind her. When they arrived at the tea stall, other than tea, there were also some snacks to eat. Why are you looking for Song Ming? He's a wastrel. He doesn't do his job all day long, but he likes beauties. Ning Lang curled his lips. He did not have a deep relationship with Song Ming, but he had heard of his reputation. It could be said that he was a local ruffian born in a wealthy family. Duan Yi knew the identity of Fengjiu's mentor. He also knew that they were going to look for Song Ming, so he did not feel anything. He did not have a deep relationship with Song Ming, but in the past, he often heard of his reputation as a wastrel in the academy. He paid attention to him only because he, Ning Lang, Song Ming and Luo Fei were listed as the 4 big thorns in the academy. No mentor dared to teach them, and no one dared to offend them. Chapter 983. He was actually very repulsed by the 8 great empires. His family was the royal family here, but it was said that they were only a small family there. He didn't want to go there, so he didn't pay much attention to his cultivation and didn't return to the academy. He didn't plan to be chosen by the Nebula sect in the future. If he was chosen, then he had to go there. He could be called a little tyrant here, but if he went to those places, he would have to be humble. He didn't want to do that. Quick, quick, Song Ming is gambling in front again. He lost a lot of money yesterday. Let's go and take a look, a few men said and went forward together. Fengjiu and the other 2 who were sitting at the tea stall heard this and their expressions changed slightly. It was said that Song Ming, in addition to his love for beauties and debauchery, was also very good at gambling. How could he lose? Let's go and take a look too. Ning Lang looked at the other 2 and asked. Yes. Fengjiu nodded. After paying for the tea, he got up and followed the crowd. Some distance ahead, an alley was crowded with people. There was a square table in the middle of the crowd. A young man in embroidered clothes sat there with his legs crossed. There was a servant behind him. There was a dice cup in front of him. There were 2 words written on the table, big and small. There was also a lot of money on it. Quick, 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 place your bets. He shouted and knocked on the table with one hand. Many people placed their bets again. Most of them bet on the big side. After everyone settled down, he opened the dice cup. When they saw the numbers inside, everyone was shocked. How can it be small? I've already opened many small games. I've already lost a lot of money on the big side. I'll definitely open big this time. Hee, I'm sorry, everyone. My luck is still pretty good today. I won again. He laughed. The servant behind him went forward to take the money and stood behind him obediently. Song Ming picked up the dice on the table and shook it. After putting it down, he shouted again, place your bets. Place your bets. I'll bet on big. I'll bet on big too. I'll definitely open big. I don't believe I won't open this side. Everyone gambled and their eyes turned red. They didn't believe in heresy and took out their money to bet on the bigger side. Fengjiu and the other 2 watched from where they were. They saw those people shouting and hollering, but when it was time to open the first round, they would open smaller rounds. After a few rounds, it was obvious that they had lost until their eyes were red. Finally, someone believed him and shouted, keep opening small. I'll buy small for this round. I'll buy a small one too. Another person followed, and in the blink of an eye, he saw a pile of gold and silver coins on the small side. However, when the plate was opened, the surroundings fell silent, and then people started cursing. Song Ming. Are you trying to cheat? If we buy a big one, we will open a small one. If we buy a small one, we will open a big one. You must be cheating. Yes, you must have cheated. Give us back our money. All of them were angry and went forward to snatch the money. However, at this moment, Song Ming snorted heavily and slammed his hands on the table. The aura of a cultivator in the late stage of foundation establishment swept out and instantly pushed the people around him away. He stood up with a sullen face and stared at the people who had fallen to the ground. He snorted coldly, how dare you steal my money? I think you've got guts. As soon as he finished speaking, he motioned for the servant behind him to put away the money on the table. Chapter 984. Right after he said that, his gaze fell on the 3 people at the side. One of them was wearing red clothes that fluttered in the wind. He had a handsome face and an outstanding temperament. The corners of his good-looking lips held an indescribable smile. For some reason, he looked a bit strange in Mo Tianga's eyes. Next to him was a purple-clothed youth and a finely clothed youth. The former had a baby face and his chin was slightly raised, revealing a bit of arrogance. The latter had a round figure and a pleasant face. His small eyes were narrowed into a line. Seeing that the three people's gazes were on him, he crossed his arms and asked, "What are you guys staring at me for?" Song Ming. Feng Jiu's gaze fell on him, sizing him up thoroughly. He was in the late stage of the foundation building realm and was about 18 or 19 years old. His clothes were loose, and he was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed and his legs slightly trembling. He looked like a slovenly ruffian. According to the information given to her by the academy, Mo Tiange knew that Song Ming's family was a bit complicated. His mother died of illness when he was 5 years old. In the same year, she found out that his father had another woman and 2 sons. One was the same age as him and the other was a year younger. The year his mother passed away, his father married that woman. He was just a 5-year-old child, but he was able to stop his mother's clansmen from inciting his father to marry that woman and become Madame Song. Under the pressure of the clan elders and his mother's relatives, in the end, that woman could only be accepted as a second wife and was called Second Madam. Even his 2 sons could only be born of concubines. Perhaps it was because of his family's environment, but his behavior had been unruly since he was a child. Fighting, gambling, and beauties were all involved. However, his talent was outstanding since he was a child. In addition, he had the support of his mother's clansmen and the protection of the clan elders. It could be said that even in his family, he was a tyrant. No one could discipline him. Mo Tiange looked at him but didn't say anything. That was because when Song Ming caught a glimpse of a few people coming from not far away, he immediately took the Qianquan bag that contained money from the attendant's hand and ran away. "You go back first. I'm going to have a chat with the beauties." "Young master, don't run. Clan head wants you to go back." When those people saw him running away, they hurriedly shouted and chased after him. Feng Jiu glanced at those people. 2 of them were golden core cultivators, and the few behind them were great spirit masters. It seemed that it wouldn't take long for them to catch Song Ming. "I've seen Song Ming from afar for a day or 2, but it looks like he doesn't remember us." As Duan Yi spoke, he looked at Feng Jiu and asked, "How do you plan to take him away?" "His family's affairs were troublesome. He probably wants to stay here and cause trouble for his dissolute father, and won't follow us to the Hell Mountain Range." Feng Jiu glanced at him and said leisurely, "You also know that all of you are troublesome." Hearing this, Duan Yi snorted and looked away. How were they not worrisome? They just didn't want to be restrained. "Let's find a place to stay. Since we're already here, why don't we find a time to visit the Song family?" Ning Lang said as he walked outside to take a look. "Let's go to the front and have a look. There should be an inn up ahead. Let's go." As she spoke, she walked forward with them, planning to find an inn to stay in first. However, after entering the inn, they booked 3 rooms and were led upstairs by the innkeeper. Just as they were about to go upstairs, they heard a young man's surprised voice behind them. Chapter 985. Feng Jiu looked back and saw a young man in embroidered robes standing in front of Tun Yun. He looked at the little white ball of Tun Yun in surprise. If Tun Yun had not been glaring at him unkindly, he probably would have reached out to carry Tun Yun. "I'm not selling." Feng Jiu called out and Tun Yun leaped to her feet. "I'll pay a high price. Sell it to me," the young man said and came to Feng Jiu's side. Feng Jiu could not help but smile when she heard that. She glanced at the young man. "Do I look like I'm in need of people?" The young man looked him up and down. Only then did he notice this person's extraordinary aura. He saw that his clothes were all of high quality, especially the rainbow-colored feather at his waist that was half covered by his outer robes. It was even more dazzling. Then I'll give you something in exchange, he said in a different way. Fengjiu ignored him. She glanced at him coldly and walked up the stairs with Tun Yun. When the youth was swept by that gaze, he felt a chill run up from the soles of his feet to his heart. However, when he saw Duanyi go upstairs, he wanted to say something, but Duanyi reached out and pushed him impolitely. What are you doing? Are you asking for a beating? Why are you pushing me? The young man was furious and glared at the baby-faced Duanyi. Compared to the young man in Red's cold gaze, the baby-faced young man did not have that kind of frightening aura. Hence, he was not afraid. Stay away from us. Duanyi snorted coldly and left behind a warning before turning around and walking upstairs. However, at this moment, his robes were stepped on, almost causing him to fall forward. Ah! I'm sorry, I accidentally stepped on your robes, the young man said apologetically. However, his face was full of provocation. Duanyi was not one to be taken advantage of. When he saw that the young man dared to step on his robes, his baby-faced face immediately darkened. He raised his leg and gave the young man a kick without warning. Bang! Hiss! The kick landed on the young man's chest and sent him flying. He fell to the ground in pain and could not stand up for a long time. Third young master. The guards outside quickly walked in and helped him up. Two of them pulled out the long swords at their waists and attacked Duanyi and Ning Lang. How dare you hit my young master? You're courting death. Ning Lang was staring at Duanyi's robe that had been stepped on. Seeing that there was a footprint on it, he was about to laugh out loud when he saw Duanyi turn around and kick the young man out. He opened his mouth in shock. While he was in a daze, a few guards rushed in from outside. Some helped the young man up, while some drew their swords and slashed at them. He was so shocked that he suddenly came back to his senses. Why are you slashing me? I didn't kick your young master, he shouted as he dodged. At the same time, he threw out a punch and hit one of the guards in the eye. Ah! My eyes! Damn it! You two brats! The other two guards also rushed forward and attacked with their long swords. The light of the blade and the shadow of the sword flashed and landed in the inn. Some of the ordinary guests were so shocked that they quickly dodged. However, some cultivators remained seated and watched the fight with interest. The innkeeper of the inn hid behind the counter and looked at the messy first floor. His face was pale with worry as he shouted, "Masters, masters, stop fighting. Stop fighting. If you continue fighting, my little inn will be destroyed." Ah! Chapter 986. Fengjiu, who was in the guest room upstairs, couldn't help but shake her head when she heard the commotion and cries downstairs. It wasn't peaceful anywhere, especially when she brought along a few troublemakers. Ning Lang wasn't very strong, but he was smart and had many thoughts. Duanyi could fight against a golden core cultivator, so she didn't have to worry about the two of them being at a disadvantage. Thus, she rubbed her neck and ordered Tun Yun to watch the door while she went inside to rest on the bed. Downstairs, a few great spirit master guards were unable to gain an advantage over Duanyi and Ning Lang, so they could only dejectedly help their third young master, who had been beaten black and blue, slip away. However, before they could leave the inn, they were blocked by Ning Lang, who was smiling and squinting his eyes. "Hee, you can leave, but shouldn't you deal with the compensation first before leaving? You guys broke it." The young man glared at him, gritting his teeth in anger. "What do you mean we broke it? You guys were the ones who broke it. Don't you think so, shopkeeper?" Ning Lang smiled and looked at the shopkeeper, who had just popped his head out from a corner. The shopkeeper wiped his cold sweat and looked at Duanyi and Ning Lang, then at the young man and the guards. He didn't know where the former came from, but his skills were extraordinary. The latter was the third young master of the Song family in the city, so he didn't dare to offend him. After hesitating for a while, he said carefully, then why don't both of you compensate me a little, Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Ning Lang's voice. What? You want me to compensate you? Shopkeeper, are you kidding me? Are you sure your eyes aren't under your feet? They were clearly the ones who brought people here to cause trouble, using knives and swords to break your tables and chairs, and you actually want this young master to compensate as well. In your dreams. It's good enough that I didn't ask you to compensate me for the shock, but you actually want me to compensate you? Do you think it's easy to earn my money? Huh? The chubby young man glared at the door, blocking the young man and the others from leaving. At the same time, he glared at the shopkeeper and lectured him. His expression seemed to say that if you dare to make me pay, I will fight you to the death. Seeing this, the shopkeeper felt guilty and didn't know what to do. It was true that the people from the Song clan had used their weapons, but if the two of them hadn't lifted the chair and table and smashed it at him, they wouldn't have been chopped into pieces, and the first floor wouldn't have been destroyed like this. The shopkeeper couldn't help but look at the people from the Song clan, and for a moment, he was very nervous. What are you waiting for? Pay up. Ning Lang glared at the people in front of him. Or do you think you haven't beaten me enough? You want another fight? The young man clenched his teeth. The pain on his face made him swallow his anger. He said to a guard, "Pay up." When a guard saw this, he hurriedly took out some money to compensate the shopkeeper. Only then did he support his young master and leave. Little guy, you're talking about money with your Lord Ning. You should be thankful that I didn't make you pay with your underwear facing the sky. Ning Lang snorted and said to the shopkeeper, "Prepare a few dishes for us and send them upstairs." "Yes, yes." The shopkeeper hurriedly responded and watched as the two of them walked upstairs. On the first floor, some cultivators sitting in the corner couldn't help but feel a little surprised when they saw this scene. They didn't expect that the two young men could actually beat the guards and that young man, and even make them pay. Chapter 987. However, the people on the first floor guessed wrong. The youth did indeed complain after returning home. However, Master Song was having a headache about his eldest son, Song Ming, and had no time to care about his youngest son. Therefore, after hearing the guard's words, he only told his son not to cause trouble and did not say anything else. In the west courtyard, a beautiful woman was looking at the jewelry sent by the jewelry shop in the courtyard. She picked up a necklace and asked a maid to put it on her. After looking at the effect, she heard the sound of kicking and cursing outside. "Go and see what's going on," the beautiful woman said slowly. Her voice was soft and gentle, like a gentle and delicate beauty. Her appearance and figure were indeed so. Even though she was already in her 30s, she looked like a woman in her 20s. This beautiful woman was the second madam of the Song family. "Madam, the third young master is sulking outside. I don't know who hit him, but his face is full of injuries. This servant wanted to apply medicine for him, but he didn't let me." "Hit by someone?" The second madam was startled. She put down the jewelry in her hand and walked out. When she came to the courtyard, she saw her son's face covered in bruises. She couldn't help but feel distressed. "Who dared to hit you like this? Quick, get the medicine for the third young master to apply." "I don't want it." He pushed the second madam away and said angrily, "I don't want it. If you're hurt, you have to apply medicine. How can you not apply medicine? Don't throw a tantrum. Quick, mother will apply it for you." She looked at her son with distress. She took the medicine from the maid and was about to apply it for him. "I won't. I won't." He angrily pushed the medicine in the second madam's hand to the ground and broke it. Seeing this, a trace of worry appeared on the second madam's delicate face. She asked, "Then tell mother, who hit you? Don't tell me it was your eldest brother who dragged you to the martial arts field and beat you like this again." It wasn't him. It was those two stinky brats. They beat me up and even made me pay for the tavern. I couldn't take this lying down, but father said he was busy with big brother's matter and told me not to cause trouble. He wouldn't stand up for me. He said hatefully, his eyes filled with unwillingness. No matter how much his father doted on him, he couldn't compare to his elder brother. His matters would never be as important as his elder brother's. Just because he was born of a concubine, just because his mother wasn't the wife of the head of the Song family. Hearing this, the second madam's eyes flickered, and she said softly, "Since your father has said so, don't think about it anymore, lest you make your father unhappy. Big brother is always causing trouble outside. When has father ever said anything about him? If big brother was bullied outside, father would help him out," he said angrily, his fists clenched tightly. The more he thought about it, the harder it was for him to get over it. Don't always compare yourself with your big brother. Your big brother is the son of the first wife. Your father has his reasons for valuing him. Just say these words here. Don't say it outside and let others hear it. Otherwise, your father and big brother will be unhappy if they know. She patted his hand and said, "All right, you can go back first. Don't mention it again. But go." She gestured and called two people to send him back to the courtyard. After he left, she sat in the courtyard. A faint light flashed through her eyes as she said, "Call the guards who went out with the third young master today." "Yes." The maid replied and went out to call them. Chapter 988. Light footsteps brushed past the roof of the inn. In the pitch-black room, Fengjiu, who was sound asleep on the bed, opened her eyes when she heard movement on the roof. Her clear eyes were as dazzling as the stars in the night. Tun Yun, who was lying at the door, straightened up and walked to the bedside to look at its master who had already woken up. Fengjiu only waved her hand gently, indicating for it to lie down. It then lay back down on the ground and closed its eyes. She did not get up. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. She wanted to see how vigilant Duan Yi and Ning Lang were. These two brats had fought with someone during the day. Were they sleeping soundly at night? Or were they still vigilant? In the other two rooms, Duan Yi and Ning Lang both woke up when someone landed on the roof. Duan Yi was already vigilant, while Ning Lang had suffered a loss once. He no longer dared to be careless. The movement was extremely small, and the aura was hidden very well. It was obvious that the person who came was not a foundation establishment cultivator, but a golden core cultivator. Was it someone sent by the Song clan? Such sneakiness was truly despicable. During the day, they had fought with someone from the Song clan. Tonight, they came to deal with them. Even a fool would know that it was someone from the Song clan. However, it was one thing to come out in the open, but to come out in the dark like this really made people look down on them. However, as they lay quietly on the bed with their eyes closed, they realized that there was no movement for a long time. They could not help but feel strange. Could it be that they were not from the Song clan? Just as they were thinking, they smelled a faint fragrance. When they smelled that fragrance, the two of them cursed inwardly. Just as they were about to jump up, their vision turned black and they lost consciousness. Just as the two of them lost consciousness, a figure came in from outside the door. The person stabbed a needle dipped in medicine into their arm and then left. In the other room, Fengjiu was also listening for the commotion. Nothing happened for a long time until a faint scent permeated the room. Her heart skipped a beat. She used her spiritual sense to instruct Tun Yun to behave like a defenseless pet and act according to the situation. Not long after, the door opened from the outside. Two black figures walked in. One of them picked up Tun Yun, who was lying on the ground, while the other went forward. Just as he was about to stab Tun Yun with a needle dipped in medicine, Fengjiu, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. He reached out and bent the needle. Crack. Ah. The sound of bones breaking rang out in the pitch-black room. The cultivator's cry of pain suddenly stopped, as if his voice was stuck in his throat. He only felt the needle pierce into his body. Soon after, he collapsed powerlessly. This sudden scene startled the other black-clothed man who was holding the little beast. Just as he was about to retreat quickly, the little beast in his arms suddenly growled. With a flash of light, it transformed from a small pet into a huge and powerful mythological beast. With a claw, it pressed down on the shocked gold core stage cultivator, making him unable to move. Hiss! You! The golden core cultivator who had been pressed to the ground by Tun Yun, who had returned to his original form, sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at Feng Jiu and the divine beast in shock. His voice stopped at the same time, and after a moment of movement, the room returned to normal. It was as if the movement just now was an illusion. Chapter 989. Is this Patriarch Song's idea? She raised her eyebrows and stared at the cultivator who was being pressed to the ground by Tun Yun. The cultivator was trembling all over and had no strength to get up. He didn't say anything and just looked at the red-clothed youth in front of him in horror. You don't want to talk. It's okay, I can take you back to the Song family to ask for an explanation. Don't even think about dying. If you die, I'll feed you to my little beast. She spoke unhurriedly and glanced at the person on the ground. She wasn't afraid that he would kill himself because she had already seen that this person was afraid of death. Otherwise, he would have killed himself the moment he was caught. He wouldn't have waited until now. Watch them. Feng Jiu ordered Tun Yun to watch over the two of them while he walked out. He first went to Duan Ye's room to check on his condition. This idiot. She couldn't help but curse in a low voice. He had really fallen into a trap. She immediately took out a silver needle and pierced Duan Ye's acupuncture points to wake him up. Unexpectedly, as soon as he woke up, his fist, which contained a fierce hidden force, was swung towards her face. She quickly blocked it and said angrily, "It's me." When he came back to his senses and heard Feng Jiu's voice, Duan Yi was surprised. "Why are you here?" As he spoke, he quickly sat up and felt that there was nothing wrong with his body. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. "Thank goodness you're fine. I thought I had fallen into a trap." "You're fine." Feng Jiu glanced at him with a strange expression. He stood up and flicked his robe. "You think you're fine?" Hearing this, Duan Ye's heart sank. He had a bad feeling. He said, "I seem to have smelled something and fainted. Now that I've woken up, I'm really fine. Am I not? Let's go next door and check on Ning Lang first." As she spoke, she turned and walked out. Duan Yi hurriedly followed behind her. When they arrived next door, he saw that Ning Lang was also unconscious on the bed. He watched as Feng Jiu stepped forward. After taking his pulse, he pierced his acupuncture points with a silver needle to wake him up. Ning Lang slowly opened his eyes. When he saw Feng Jiu sitting by the bed, he was stunned. "Feng Jiu, why are you in my room?" He sat up. Seeing that Duan Yi was also there, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. "You're all here. That's good. Let me tell you. Have you heard the sound of it? Since you already knew, why did you still allow yourself to fall into the trap and put yourself in danger? Are you tired of living? Why didn't you know how to react in the first place?" She looked at the two of them, her voice cold and sharp. The two of them were silent for a while. They looked at each other and then at Feng Nine, waiting for him to continue. From the moment she woke up, she saw the anger on his face. It was obvious that something was wrong in 2. She crossed her arms and leaned against the bed. Her handsome expression was cold, and a chill flashed across her eyes. She suddenly felt her hands itch for this kind of vicious person who easily took people's lives. Hearing her words, Duan Ye's face darkened. His whole body exuded a bloodthirsty killing intent. Ning Lang's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Chapter 990. I also want to know who did this. Duan Ye's voice was cold and murderous. His doll-like face was filled with a bloodthirsty expression. Feng Jiu's gaze swept past the two of them. The two golden core cultivators are still in my room. Let's go. Let's go and ask them. As she spoke, she turned and walked out, heading towards her guest room. When the two of them heard this, they were stunned. Two golden core cultivators had been defeated by him. Puzzled, they followed him out to his room. As soon as they entered, the two of them jumped in fright and nearly cried out in alarm. In the room, a ferocious beast that looked like a tiger and a lion exuded a powerful aura. It made them unable to take a step forward for a long time. That was a divine beast. It was actually a divine beast. And they actually sensed a trace of little Tun Yun's aura from this terrifyingly powerful divine beast. The beast's eyes were even more frightening than Tun Yun's when he was shrunk. The bloodthirsty and ferocious eyes were filled with a terrifying murderous intent. Just one look was enough to make the two of them tremble. Especially when they saw a golden core cultivator lying on the ground under the divine beast's claws. He seemed to be gasping for breath. His face was pale and his aura was weak, as if he would die at any moment. As for the other side, he was lying unconscious on the ground. The two golden core cultivators were being guarded by the divine beast. Even if two more people came, they would not be able to escape, let alone just the two of them. He's over there. You can interrogate him. She gestured. She did not go forward but sat down at the table and poured herself a cup of tea. Duan Yi and Ning Lang looked at each other as their lives were at stake. They walked forward and looked at the golden core cultivator who was being stepped on by Tun Yun. They asked coldly, "Who ordered you to use such a despicable method?" The golden core cultivator was panting as if he could not breathe. He looked at the two of them but did not speak. Tun Yun saw the two of them and retreated. At the same time, he shrank into a small ball like a small pet without any attack power. He came to Feng Jiu and sat down beside her. You won't speak. Duan Yi took out his long sword and pointed it at his crotch. Are you going to speak or not? As soon as the voice came out, his long sword went in a little deeper. With just a light stroke, a hole was cut in the pants. Fear and nervousness appeared in the eyes of the golden core cultivator, who had been pressed to the ground by Tun Yun. No, don't. I'll talk. Without a doubt, compared to the golden core cultivator who was afraid of death and kept his secret tightly, he was more afraid of becoming an androgynous person. Hence, when he felt a sudden sense of danger, when he felt a chill in his pants and cold sweat broke out all over his body, he chose to speak of the mastermind. It's second madam. We're second madam's people. Third young master was beaten up by you and the master was dealing with first young master's matter. He only told the third young master not to cause trouble. Third young master could not take this lying down and begged second madam. Second madam asked us to drug you. She did not want others to suspect the Song family, so she gave us a slow-acting poison that will only take effect after 3 days. By then, even if you die, no one will suspect the Song family. This is what we know. I've told you everything. Please let me live. Chapter 991. Hearing this, Duan Yi and Ning Lang's expressions changed. Second madam. The woman that Master Ning had outside. It was said that that woman could only be considered the second madam in the Song family, and her son could only be the son of a concubine. However, it was said that this woman had always been very gentle and weak. After many years, her status in the Song family had also risen. Unexpectedly, she was a two-faced person with such a vicious mind. Well, if she didn't have some tricks, how could she give birth to a son of the same age as Song Ming? How could she be brought into the family after Song Ming's mother died? If it weren't for Song Ming's mother's family stopping her, she would have been the madam of the Song family now. It was reasonable for such a scheming woman to say that she was the one who sent people to do tonight's matter. Because the young man who was beaten up by them today was her biological son. If Master Song didn't show up, how could she, as his mother, remain calm? However, before she made her move, she had not inquired about their origins. How could they be so easily taken by anyone who wanted to take their lives? Since she couldn't take their lives silently, they had to think about how to repay her. Feng Jiu, who was sitting at the table, supported her chin with one hand as she listened to the Golden Core cultivator's words. She didn't show any reaction on her face, but she was already thinking about how to deal with this second madam. She had never been soft-hearted towards people who came to bully her. Especially when it was just a fight between young people. Why should she interfere? She even used such a shameful and insidious method. It was really shameless. Duanyi glanced at the two people on the ground, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. The next moment, he raised the sharp sword in his hand, and as the cold light flashed, blood splashed out. The conscious person was killed before he could even beg for mercy. As for the other person, he breathed his last in a coma. Ning Lang, take care of the bodies, Duanyi said, then walked to Fengjiu and asked, can you cure our poison? Fengjiu glanced at the two of them and said, come and get the antidote tomorrow morning. Hearing this, the two of them were relieved. Duanyi asked again, what do you think about that woman? Thoughts? I don't have any thoughts about such a vicious woman, but since we've already formed a grudge tonight, it doesn't seem right if I don't return the favor. She sneered as she tapped her fingers on the table, a cold light flashing in her eyes. Seeing this, Duanyi and Ning Lang exchanged glances. They knew that there was no need for them to do anything, as he would handle it himself. Moreover, they believed that Fengjiu would definitely be more effective than them. Thus, the two of them dealt with the corpse and cleaned up the bloodstains on the ground. They went back to their rooms to rest and waited for dawn to come back to collect the antidote. With the ghost doctor by their side, even if they were poisoned, the two of them were not that worried. The second madam of the Song family had suddenly made a move because she hadn't investigated the identities of the three of them. They only knew that she would soon regret her evil scheme tonight. When the two of them returned to their room, Fengjiu began to concoct the antidote for them. Even though it was highly toxic, it was not difficult for her. With one bottle of antidote, the poison in their bodies would be cured by tomorrow. Chapter 992. In the black market, deep in the night, when he heard that someone had arrived with a level 1 black token, the black market president, who was sound asleep, could only quickly get up. After getting dressed, he quickly went to the front living room, accompanied by two black market elders. Once they entered the living room, they saw a handsome youth in red sitting inside. When they saw the youth's face, the three couldn't help but be startled, then they were pleasantly surprised. We didn't know it was the ghost doctor, please forgive us for not welcoming you. The president stepped in, smiling as he apologized. Fengjiu, who had taken a sip of tea, put down the teacup in his hand and looked at the newcomers. The middle-aged man and the two elders stood up and cupped his hands in greeting, President, two elders. When the two elders saw this, they also smiled and hurriedly returned the greeting, Ghost Doctor, please sit. Everyone sat down and dismissed the attendants. The president and the two elders looked at each other, then asked, I wonder why the ghost doctor has come to visit so late at night? As the saying goes, one doesn't visit a temple without a cause, let alone the ghost doctor who had always been low-key. If she didn't have something to ask of them, she probably wouldn't have come to the black market. I need information on the second wife of the Song family head. She directly stated her purpose, looking at them meaningfully, some information that outsiders can't find. Hearing this, the three were startled. The second wife of the Song family head? Could it be that that woman offended the ghost doctor? Thinking of this, the three looked at each other, then nodded. Since the ghost doctor has asked, we naturally won't hide it. I won't hide it from the ghost doctor. In the places where the black market is located, there will be information on the local families and some important people. It can be said that we can gather information on 3 generations of their ancestors. Otherwise, our black market wouldn't have such a large area of influence in each place. The president smiled and said, naturally, we can't take out the information in the depths of the black market, but to our own people, it doesn't matter. He stood up and said to Fengjiu, Ghost Doctor, please wait for a moment, I'll go get it. Saying this, he bowed to Fengjiu and turned to leave. Ghost Doctor, how did the second madam of the Song clan offend you? The 2 elders asked. Seeing this, Fengjiu briefly explained the situation. I see. The 2 of them nodded and said, this second madam of the Song clan has some tricks up her sleeves. She has also raised quite a number of people in secret. This is something that even the Song clan head doesn't know about. If she hadn't offended me, I wouldn't have bothered with her. It's just a pity that she secretly used a vicious move because of a fight between a few youths. If I don't teach her an unforgettable lesson, she'll really think that everyone can be bullied. Fengjiu's expression was cold. Originally, she wanted to only take Song Ming away from the Song family. Who would have thought that someone would dare to poison the people around her in front of her? Did they really think that she, Fengjiu, was a pushover? Ha ha ha, actually, the ghost doctor doesn't have to do it herself. One of the elders smiled and stroked his beard. Looking at Fengjiu, he said, there are plenty of people who want her life. It's just that they can't get hold of that woman's weakness. They're here. I've kept the ghost doctor waiting. Chapter 993. Fengjiu received it and opened it to take a look. Page after page of information recorded what the second madam of the Song clan had done. The information was so accurate that it even recorded the time and date of the incident. She looked through the pages, and the more she looked, the brighter her eyes became. With this thing, she didn't need to do anything, and it would be enough to consign the second madam of the Song clan to eternal damnation. She kept the information in her hands and handed it to the president, saying, President, can I trouble you to send this information to Song Ming's mother's clan? If Song Ming's mother's clan received this information, they wouldn't give the second madam any time to breathe. Their daughter had died, but not from an illness, but from a hidden poison. This poison came from the hands of the second madam. She believed that if they knew the truth, even the Song clan's patriarch wouldn't be able to protect the second madam. Of course. The president replied with a smile and took the document. Don't worry, ghost doctor. I'll send someone to handle this matter now. I believe you'll see a reaction by daybreak. As he spoke, he called out to someone outside and instructed them to hand over the document. All right, then I'll have to trouble you. She nodded and got up to leave. The 3 of them sent her out of the black market. Watching the red figure disappear into the night, one of the elders shook his head and sighed, this second madam of the Song clan is too blind. Who could she have offended? Offending the ghost doctor. The ghost doctor's whereabouts have always been a mystery. She also keeps a low profile and doesn't let anyone know her identity. It's normal that the Song clan woman doesn't know. I can only say that her luck has run out. Otherwise, why would she choose to make a move on the ghost doctor? That's right. Even if she didn't have this information, if the ghost doctor wanted to deal with her, she could have killed her in 100 different ways. At this point, one of the elders coughed lightly and said, some time ago, news came from the Star Cloud black market. It said that an alchemist from the School of Stars and Clouds went to steal his beauty pill. The ghost doctor stuffed the beauty pill into that alchemist's mouth. That alchemist immediately turned from a man to a woman. Until now, he hasn't recovered. He, only the ghost doctor can be so willful. After a beauty-nourishing pill was consumed by an imperial concubine of a first-tier country, the news spread like wildfire. Right now, the price on the market has increased by who knows how many times. If those people knew that the ghost doctor once so willfully stuffed a beauty-nourishing pill into the mouth of a pill master, their hearts would probably ache to death. The Empire's headquarters are paying a lot of attention to the ghost doctor. Some time ago, they even issued a black order saying that anyone who disrespects the ghost doctor will be punished severely. Moreover, it said that the higher-ups are already looking forward to when the ghost doctor will go to the Empire. She advanced to become a golden core cultivator in a 2-star academy. This news has already spread within our star cloud black market. I believe that it won't be long before she can go to the Empire. Moreover, she is not an ordinary person. In these small countries, she can't be trapped. The 3 people chatted at the entrance until, after a while, they turned around and walked inside. As for Fengjiu, she did not directly return to the inn. Instead, she took advantage of the night to quietly come to the Song residence. She hid her aura, and her whole person blended into the night. Silently, like a ghost, she swept through the night and easily entered the inner courtyard of the Song residence. Chapter 994. The second madam of the Song mansion was the only mistress in the mansion. However, because she was not the madam of the master, she could only be considered a concubine at best. Therefore, she did not have the qualifications to stay in the east courtyard. In the Song mansion, the master of the Song mansion lived in the east courtyard, which was also the main courtyard. The south courtyard was the second largest courtyard after the east courtyard and was lived by Song Ming. As for the west courtyard, it was divided into 2 parts. One side was occupied by the second madam and the other by her 2 sons. The north courtyard was used to entertain guests. Therefore, it was easy for her to find the second madam's courtyard. Perhaps the second madam was not worried about the guards of the Song mansion, or perhaps she thought that no one would dare to come to the Song mansion. Therefore, other than the 2 teams of night guards, there were only 2 guards guarding the courtyard door. Seeing this, she entered from the back and quietly snuck into the room through the window. Her body was as light as a cat. After landing steadily, she leaned slightly to the side and hid in the dark. Looking at the figure on the bed, she thought to herself, "This woman is proficient in poisons. How should I deal with her?" Just as she was thinking, she saw the woman turn over and a sleepy voice came from the gauze curtain, "Rui, pour me a cup of water." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly. She flashed to the outer room and took out a pill. She crushed it into powder and sprinkled it into the water bottle. This pill was colorless and odorless. Even if she was proficient in poisons, she would not be able to detect anything. The maid who waited outside at night pushed the door open and lit the lamp. She poured the water and brought it forward, "Madam, water." From inside the gauze curtain, a pair of soft, snow-white hands reached out. After receiving the water, she drank it in a few mouthfuls. Then, she handed the cup back and asked with a lazy and sleepy voice, "What time is it?" "Madam, it's just past midnight." The maid respectfully replied. You may leave." She waved her hand, indicating for the maid to leave. Just as she was about to go back to sleep, she heard a voice from outside. "Greetings, family head." The 2 guards bowed respectfully. When the woman in the room heard this, she was startled and hurriedly said, "Master is here?" As she spoke, she had already stood up to greet him. After hiding in the dark and seeing her drink the water, she went outside and put the antidote in the water bottle to prevent others from discovering it. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a voice coming from outside. He couldn't help but be startled. He immediately hid in the dark again. "Master, why are you here so late?" Second madam's black hair hung loosely over her shoulders. She was only wearing a dudu and a light muslin covering her body. Her snow-white skin and alluring spring scenery were faintly discernible. Her slender waist and exquisite and graceful figure were even more seductive and charming in the night. Her bare feet were like jade as she lightly walked forward with a bit of surprise and a bit of a young girl's posture. Seeing this, Song family head's eyes darkened. There seemed to be a ball of fire dancing in his eyes, and his eyes became deep. He waved his hand to signal the maidservant to leave and reached out to embrace the delicate woman who was walking towards him. His big hand embraced that slender, jade-like skin that was warm and soft like a piece of beautiful jade, making him reluctant to let go. His big hand tightened and squeezed the woman's ample bosom into his embrace. His big hand slowly moved down and caressed. Lien, why did you get off the bed barefoot? The cold air on the ground is not good for the body. His deep voice was hoarse. The moment he spoke, he had already picked her up by the waist and walked towards the bed. Second Madame's face was filled with shyness. She reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her head in his chest. Chapter 995. She had originally planned to leave, but now that Song family head had come in, she couldn't leave even if she wanted to. Then should she stay and watch their erotic show? Thinking of this, her eyes moved, but she decided to forget about it. A middle-aged man with a bit of weight wasn't much to look at. It was better for her to hide here and look for an opportunity to leave. In the room, the woman's delicate voice sounded, accompanied by the man's panting. She narrowed her eyes and glanced at the tent. She could faintly see two figures overlapping in the tent, and the sound of their panting was filled with ecstasy. After waiting in the room for nearly an hour, she couldn't help but rub her chin. She looked at the bed that was creaking from the shaking, as well as the panting and moaning coming from their bodies. She couldn't help but think to herself, it's the middle of the night, but these two people are playing quite intensely. Taking advantage of the fact that the two were too busy to pay attention to anything else, she quietly slipped out and lightly jumped out of the room. After a few breaths, she hid herself in the shadows outside, avoiding the night patrols, and lightly leaped out of the Song residence. Outside, she turned around to look at the Song residence, and the corners of her lips curled up. She wanted to know what Song family head's expression would be when he woke up and saw that the beautiful woman in his arms had turned into an old woman with a face full of wrinkles. She walked towards the inn. There were very few people on the road, and the sky was hazy, but some small stalls had already begun to open, preparing for business at dawn. When she passed by a small stall, she smelled the strong scent of soy milk and couldn't help but stop. Is this soy milk? She looked at a middle-aged couple and asked. It's tofu pudding. The water is still boiling, and it's not ready yet. The woman replied. How long will it take before we can eat? She rubbed her stomach and sat down at their table. It'll be ready in another hour. Young master can sit for a while, drink some tea, or eat some snacks. These are all homemade snacks. The woman said as she brought some snacks and tea to Fengjiu. Seeing this, Fengjiu sat there and ate. In any case, she couldn't go back to sleep now, so she might as well wait until dawn to call the two of them and go to the Song residence to watch the show. After making up her mind, she sat there with her chin in her hand. When the sky gradually brightened, she brought back 2 portions of tofu pudding for the 2 people in the inn. Other than the tofu pudding, she also brought back some snacks made by the couple from the stall. When she returned to the inn, she happened to see the 2 people coming down from upstairs. You didn't come back last night? The 2 of them looked at Fengjiu who had just entered and asked in surprise. Drink the antidote? She looked at the 2 of them and asked. Because it was still early, there was almost no one on the first floor of the inn. Yes, Tunyun told us. The 2 nodded and came to Fengjiu's side. They looked him up and down and asked, You didn't secretly go to the Song family, did you? Come and go as he pleases. No one would have noticed. The Song clan master was a nascent soul stage cultivator, and there were also nascent soul stage cultivators in their residence. He was only at the Oris core stage. If he went there, he would definitely be noticed. However, if he didn't go to the Song clan, they really couldn't figure out where he had run off to for the entire night. I brought breakfast for the two of you on the way back. Here, hurry up and eat. After that, we'll go and watch the show. She placed the food in her hand on the table and gestured for the two of them to hurry up and eat. At the same time, she called upstairs, "Tun Yun, come down." Chapter 996. After Duan Yi and Ning Lang glanced at Fengjiu, they sat down at the table and ate the breakfast he brought back for them. As they ate, the two of them pondered. Did he go to the Song family to watch the show? Why did he go to the Song family? Curious, they ate their breakfast much faster. After hastily finishing their food, they wiped their mouths and stood up. We're done eating. Let's go. Fengjiu was patting Tun Yun's head and stroking its soft fur when he heard their voices. He turned his head slightly and saw that the two of them had stood up and were looking at him. Seeing this, he smiled and said, "Don't be in such a hurry. Sit down. I'll take your pulse and see how your bodies are doing after taking the medicine." Hearing this, the two of them sat down and placed their hands on the table. He reached out and placed his fingers on their pulses. Looking at his fair and slender fingers, the two of them felt their hearts skip a beat. Why were his hands so thin? So fair. Moreover, his fingers were so sharp, just like a woman's slender hands. They thought to themselves, but didn't dare to show it on their faces. If they said that he had a pair of women's hands, he would probably be angry. After all, no man would be willing to be treated as a woman. After Fengjiu took their pulses, he retracted his hand after a long while and nodded. Yes, the poison is dormant. It won't erupt all at once. Therefore, it's easier to remove the poison. His sleeves moved slightly and took out a medicine bottle from his space. He poured out 2 pills. There are 2 blood-cleansing pills here. Take them before you go to bed tonight. The two of them reached out to take the pills. Duan Yi put the pills away. Ning Lang held the pills in his hand and asked, "Can't we take them now? Won't it be faster if we take them now? You just took the antidote this morning. You can't take this with them in case the medicinal effects repel each other. Take them before you go to bed at night." As she spoke, she looked at the sky outside and smiled. "Let's go. It should be about time to go there now." Thus, the 3 people and 1 beast followed him to the Song mansion. At the same time, in the west courtyard of the Song mansion, Patriarch Song, who had just woken up in the morning, instinctively touched the person in his arms. With a warm and fragrant jade in his arms, it should have been very comfortable. However, when he touched it, it felt a little dry and rough. He was startled and opened his eyes with some doubts. He slightly lowered his head to look at the person in his arms. Ah! As he screamed, he instinctively jumped up from the bed. With a piece of cloth wrapped around his waist, he jumped off the bed. His face was filled with fear and shock. His usually dignified face was now filled with shame and anger. "Who are you? Get out!" The woman on the bed woke up from her daze and looked at the person standing in front of the bed glaring at her in confusion. Her voice was filled with confusion and doubt. "Master, what's wrong?" However, the moment she spoke, even she was stunned. She opened her mouth in a daze and instinctively lowered her head. When she saw the wrinkled skin on her hand, she immediately screamed. "Ah!" Her sharp voice was filled with panic and fear, as well as disbelief. Her eyes were wide open and her body couldn't stop trembling. She looked at her hands and then stretched out her trembling hands to touch her face, as well as the strand of white hair that fell on her cheek. Chapter 997. When the naked figure in the mirror was reflected in her eyes, she stepped back in disbelief. Her legs went soft and she fell to the ground. The person in the mirror was like an old woman. Her sexy and plump body had become old and shriveled at this time. Her face was skinny and she was no longer as beautiful as before. Her white hair made her look like an old woman who was nearly 100 years old. There was nothing familiar about her. How could this be? How could this be? How could I become like this? How could this be? Her hands tightly wrapped around her ugly naked body as she muttered uncontrollably. Her expression carried a trace of absent-mindedness, unable to believe that when she woke up, she had become neither a human nor a ghost. In a trance, she seemed to have thought of something. Helplessly and in a panic, she looked at the Song family head who was standing at the side and glaring at her angrily. She cried, "Master, Master, how could this be? How could I become like this?" Song family head was still furious a moment ago, but when he woke up, the enchanting beauty in his arms had turned into an old woman who was over 100 years old. Just as he was about to put on his clothes and order people to drag her out, he heard a hoarse and unpleasant sobbing voice. She even called him master, which made him furious. He was angry and embarrassed. He stepped forward and kicked the naked old woman who was sitting on the ground. "Bastard! Who the hell are you?" Second Madam, who was in a state of panic and helplessness, was kicked in the chest by him. Her whole body fell backward, rolled twice, and hit a cabinet in the corner. Her head hit the ground, and the skin on it was broken. Blood seeped out, and she cried out in pain because of the internal force contained in that kick. "Ah!" She screamed and struggled to get up. With tears streaming down her face, she looked at Song family head who was already putting on his clothes and cried, "Master, it's me, I'm Lien, I'm Lien, Song family head, who was putting on his clothes, was shocked when he heard this. He stopped putting on his clothes and looked like he had seen a ghost. You're Lien, He took a breath of cold air. How could it be? Obviously, he didn't believe that a delicate and beautiful beauty had become an old woman when she woke up. No one could bear this psychological change and visual impact. "Patriarch? What's the matter with the patriarch? Do you need us to go in?" Because of the screams and cries in the room, the guards outside were alerted. At this moment, a few guards were shouting outside and asking questions. As soon as they heard the order to come in, they would rush in. Upon hearing the conversation outside, Second Madam, who was lying on the ground, endured the pain of being kicked and struggled to get up. She hurriedly put on her clothes, but at the thought of her inhuman appearance, she couldn't help but burst into tears. However, when she cried when she was young and beautiful, it was like a pear blossom with tears. She was so delicate and beautiful that it made people feel pity for her. At this moment, she had turned into an old woman. Her body and appearance had changed. Her hair was white and her face was wrinkled. When she cried again, it would only make people feel disgusted. They wouldn't even want to take a second look at her. "You are Lien, Song family head calmed down. He also felt that it was impossible for an outsider to sleep in his arms after he fell asleep. Then, was this old woman really Lien, However, if it really was her, how did she suddenly become like this overnight? Chapter 998. Song family head frowned and looked at her. He paused for a moment and then said, "I'll ask the doctor to come and take a look at you." While speaking, he walked out of the outer room and ordered someone to quickly ask the doctor in the mansion to come over. The second madam was crying in a low voice in the inner room. Master Song frowned and looked inside from time to time, but he did not go in again. Perhaps he did not want to face the old woman. Not long after, the doctor hurried in under the lead of the guards and entered. Under the master's instructions, he came to the inner room to diagnose the second madam. However, after seeing the second madam's condition, the doctor was surprised and shocked. How is it? Master Song asked in a deep voice and looked at the doctor in the mansion. Master, I've never seen or heard of the second madam situation. The old man's face was full of surprise. He sighed and said, I've only heard of people whose hair turned white overnight, but I've never heard of people who aged overnight. I've checked madam's pulse and checked her body, but I couldn't find anything wrong. This old man is really helpless in this case of aging overnight. I don't know how to treat it. Hearing this, the crying sound came out again. However, this time, Song family had only felt irritated when he heard it. Mother? Mother? Outside, a worried voice came. It was the third young master of the Song family, the youngest son of the second madam. Because the guard went to find the doctor in the mansion, and he was also in the western courtyard, he heard that there seemed to be something wrong here. The crying came out early in the morning, so he hurried over. He ran in quickly. As soon as he entered, he saw his father was also there. He could not help but slow down and salute in a regular way. Father. Why are you here? Master Song looked at his youngest son and calmed down. I heard from the servant that there was crying early in the morning, so I came to have a look. He looked at his father, who was sitting steadily, and asked carefully, Father, what's wrong with my mother? Hearing this, Song family head frowned, sighed, stood up, and said to him, You go and have a look. As soon as his voice fell, he didn't comfort the people inside, but strode out. Seeing this, the crying sound came again. When third young master saw this, he couldn't help but be startled. He stopped the doctor who was about to leave and asked, What happened to my mother? The doctor stopped in his tracks and glanced at him before saying, Third young master, second madam has contracted the disease of aging and turned into an old woman overnight. You should go in and take a look. As he spoke, he shook his head and walked out. The third young master's eyes widened in astonishment when he heard his words. Aging disease? What was that? He strode inside and saw his mother curled up in bed with the quilt. He couldn't help but go forward, Mother. What's wrong with you? What's going on? Let me have a look. As he spoke, he pulled down her blanket with one hand, but when the person under the blanket was revealed, it gave him a fright. Ah! He exclaimed and instinctively took a few steps back. His heart was thumping wildly and he looked at the person on the bed in disbelief with a frightened expression. That was his mother. How could this be? Chapter 999. Seeing this scene and hearing her words, third young master was also at a loss. I had someone send a message to second brother yesterday. He should be home today. Second brother has always had a lot of ideas. He must have a way. Here, he was comforting his mother in the room. Seeing this sudden change, he didn't know how to deal with it. Originally, he had asked someone to bring his brother back because he had suffered outside. He hoped that his brother could help him think of a way to vent his anger. He didn't expect that he would be beaten up yesterday, and today, something like this would happen to his mother. The sound of crying continued in the west courtyard, and the atmosphere was gloomy. In another place, in another family in the same city, Song Ming's mother's family, his grandfather, and the others received the information from the black market. When they saw the information, they were all furious and called people to go to the Song family. Song Ming's mother's family was also a big family in the city. Although their foundation couldn't compare to the Song family, who had the support of other families in the 8 great empires, their power and status in the city weren't low. Otherwise, the second madam wouldn't have been unable to become the official wife for more than 10 years, and her son could only be born of a concubine. Now that they knew the inside story of that year, they were extremely furious. Full of anger, they brought people to the Song family's mansion. Because they were from the eldest young master Song Ming's mother's family and were relatives of the Song family, even if they brought people with them in anger, the gatekeepers couldn't stop them. Where's that woman? Drag her out. The old man in the lead was Song Ming's mother's father, who was also his grandfather, the Lu family's great master. Ever since he abdicated, it had been a long time since he was this angry. Almost as soon as they entered the Song family's mansion, Song Ming's servant quickly ran to the south courtyard to tell the eldest young master, who was grounded. At the same time, the Song family's housekeeper and some other people saw that the situation wasn't good and quickly went to inform the master, great master, and the elders. After all, even the great master of the Lu family had come out. It was obvious that the situation wasn't good. However, in the end, the eldest young master didn't cause any trouble that was too excessive. Why did they come in anger? They even looked like they wanted to kill someone. What was the reason? Go to the west courtyard and bring that woman here. The Lu family patriarch sat in the front hall, giving orders to his son, the Lu family patriarch, 2 nascent soul cultivators, and 4 family elders. After hearing the news, Song family head hurried over and saw his father-in-law and brother-in-law sitting in the hall angrily. Even the elders of the Lu family had come. Song family head couldn't help but be a little surprised. He hurried over and bowed to the Lu family's old man, his father-in-law. "Father-in-law, what's going on?" he asked, his face full of confusion. Bang! Elder Lu's face was gloomy. He slammed his hand on the table and stared at him with sharp eyes and anger. "You raised a good woman." Song family head was startled by the heavy slap on the table. Before he could recover, he heard his father's words. He felt even more strange and asked, "What does father-in-law mean by this? Did something happen? What is it? Don't you know what's happened?" "That's right, if it wasn't for someone sending the information to us, I wouldn't know what happened more than 10 years ago." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.